2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show, yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network. This is a Football Friday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number if you want to jump on in. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. We're rocking and rolling all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific today. I got Moist Mike. I got Stuart Kovacs with me, and we'll have some guests join us along the way. NFL draft analyst Mike Renner will stop by 40 minutes from now. Brian Finneran, the former Falcons wide receiver, will join us at 4:20 p.m. Eastern, 1:20 p.m. Pacific today. And then the final hour of the show, James Palmer is going to join us as well, the longtime NFL reporter. All righty. I got to start off the show with the Atlanta Falcons. By the way, that was the craziest first round of an NFL draft I've ever seen. We had 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks. If you would have told me that before the draft started, would have never believed you. I knew there was a chance that no defensive players would go in the top 10. I would have never thought, though, that we would have had to wait until pick 15 to see the first defensive player go off the board. But the biggest stunner is the Atlanta Falcons at 8 taking Michael Penix Jr. And before that, like, we all knew Caleb Williams was going 1 to the Bears. We all knew Jaden Daniels was going to the Commanders. Drake May was going to the Pats. Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Cardinals. I was surprised by Joe Alt going to the Chargers. It makes sense for how Harbaugh builds his team. But Joe Alt joined us the Wednesday before the draft, right? The other day. And he said, I didn't even have a top 30 visit with the Los Angeles Chargers. So surprising, but not a major stunner. Giants passing on a quarterback, a little bit surprising, but a lot of people thought they were going to take Malik Neighbors. Since Alt was off the board, J.C. Latham, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, goes to Tennessee. And then you had Adam Schefter. I was watching the ESPN coverage. You had Adam Schefter pop up on your screen. And I guess he wrote about this the day before the draft, that there was buzz picking up about Michael Penix Jr. going in the top 10. And he said, don't be surprised if the Falcons end up taking him. Now, Perloff, to be fair, when he joined us in studio the other day, he brought that up. And I was like, what? That would make no sense. Because Kirk Cousins just signed a 4-year contract with $100 million guaranteed. So why would they draft Michael Penix Jr., who turns 24 next month? Like, if I'm Terry Fontenot, and let's say they said, Zach Gelb, you get to switch lives with Terry Fontenot for one day, and it was draft day. At pick 8, when you signed Kirk Cousins in the offseason, and you were just missing a quarterback last year, you have a good young secondary. You could use another pass rusher, obviously. And on offense, now you have Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. At that pick at 8, I would have taken Rome Odunze. That's what I would have done. I would have drafted Rome Odunze, and I would have went for the explosive additional playmaker on the offensive side of the ball. But if you said to me, no, we don't want you taking Rome Odunze. Like if Arthur Blank called me up and said, Zach, we don't want Rome Odunze, I would say, well, Arthur, this is why you should take him. He's going to be a great wide receiver in the NFL. But if he said, pick somebody else, I would have gone with Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, to try to go get to the quarterback, even Latu Laitu at that moment. But to take Michael Penix Jr., I just couldn't believe it. So I'm trying to justify the pick. Because every Tom, Dick, and Harry that gets on the radio or gets on your TV set today is going to say it's an awful pick. It's a terrible pick. It's a pick that makes no sense. And don't get me wrong. I will make this abundantly clear right out of the gate. 1,010% clear right out of the gate. I disagree with the pick. The pick should have been Rome Odunze. When you sign Kirk Cousins, you shouldn't draft a quarterback that you're going to have him sit for 2 years that's about to turn 24. And I'm a Penix fan. I thought Penix was underrated in this process. I thought he was disrespected. He's the best deep ball thrower in this draft. My concern with him is not only staying healthy, as we saw the injuries pile up at Indiana, but it's the underneath throws when Michigan in the national championship game after his amazing semifinal game up against Texas, where it was one of the best deep ball performances you'll ever see from a quarterback in the history of college football. But in the national championship game, Michigan said, with our great secondary and pass rush, we're going to take away the deep throws, and you have to beat us underneath. And he couldn't do that, and he made mistake after mistake. I know you could chalk it up to one game, but that's a concern that I have with Michael Penix Jr. And if Michael Penix Jr. got drafted by the Falcons, and let's say Kirk Cousins wasn't there, I would say that's a good pick. I'd be like, that's a good fit. Because you could have him start right away. You got Bijan, you got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London. Okay, I'm all in. But we have to address the elephant in the room. And it's $100 million guaranteed elephant, $160 million contract over 4 years. It's Kirk freaking Cousins. He is there. That's why you can't make that selection. But I'll try to justify the pick here. I'll try to listen. I'll try to have an open mind here and see if I could come around on what the Falcons did last night. Because I think 99.9% of us in the moment last night were shocked. We were stunned. We were irate. We couldn't believe it. But then you sleep on it. Then you wake up this morning. You hear the justification. And I wonder how many people now have a change of heart. So let me take you back, because it's crazy. And I told you I was not a good test taker. But even when I get the answers to the test, sometimes I can't figure it out. we were at the Super Bowl, and we were able to talk to the owner of the Falcons and Arthur Blank. And I said to him, how do you find your best quarterback? What's the best approach? Is it in free agency? Is it in the draft? Is it via trade? And Arthur Blank pretty much told us that day, on February 9th in the year of 2024, how the Falcons were going to approach this.
The last great quarterback we had was Matt Ryan. I mean, that's really what you wanted. That's really the kind of franchise transitions you want to see. It's not easy to do. Obviously done in Green Bay. They drafted Jordan Love early, kept him on the bench for a while, played behind Aaron. Aaron moved on. Jordan stepped up this year, played at a high level. So you're looking for a long-term solution. Yeah. Sometimes in a long-term solution, you have to have an interim solution too. So you got to do sometimes a mixture of both. But ideally, long-term, you're looking for that franchise quarterback.
You want a long-term solution, but sometimes you need an interim solution before you get the long-term solution. Well, the interim solution you usually think is like a stopgap guy, right? A Jacoby Brissett, a Gardner Minshew. Maybe, like what the Jets are doing. If the Jets would have taken a quarterback last night, you have a quarterback that is significantly older, right? In the last year or two of his career, and then you take a stab at a quarterback and you have him sit and wait. Or like what the Packers did, right? Even as Arthur Blank said, where, Rodgers still had some good years of football, but you draft Jordan Love, who at the time was 21. But that interim quarterback, if he's not already on your roster, you don't usually sign a month or two before and guarantee him $100 million. It's just bonkers to me. And I hear Arthur Blank say that, and even on the back end, okay, an interim to a long-term solution, then the long-term solution, if he's going to have to sit, you would think that long-term solution would be like, I don't know, J.J. McCarthy's age of 21, and not about to be 24 in May that Michael Penix Jr. is about to turn next month. Let's hear from Raheem Morris. So this is after the fact. This is late last night. The pick is made. Everyone's shocked. Now let's hear the justification. That was Arthur Blank setting it up back in February. Now we know, okay, you have Kirk Cousins, you have Michael Penix Jr. This is the new head football coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and Raheem Morris, on drafting Michael Penix Jr.
When you get Kirk Cousins and you talk about short-term winning, you talk about winning right now, which we know we're going to be in position to do, which we want to be in position to do, we won't have the ability to be picking this high again with the guy that we got. And these guys go off the board pretty quickly, and we thought it would be important for us to address our future quarterback right now while we're picking this low. Green Bay model was something that we talked about, and it's been proven to be right last year. So hopefully we'll be right with them.
Now, that's their best argument. Even though you have some flaws in the age of Michael Penix Jr., it's the Green Bay model. Because this does feel like Green Bay, where at the time everyone crushed the Packers for not taking a wide receiver. And why did they trade up to go do so in at 26? Like, what the heck are they doing with the Green Bay Packers taking Jordan Love? Rodgers won 2 more MVPs, then got hurt, wasn't great in the last season in Green Bay. They missed out on the playoffs. And now we know after 1 year, Brian Gutekunst actually looked like he got it right because Jordan Love looks like he's on his way as a pro quarterback. But the Michael Penix Jr. argument and comparing him to Jordan Love, that's the great disconnect for me. And maybe if I'm trying to justify it, if I'm trying to have an open mind on it, maybe Tom Brady, as crazy as this sounds, and people will be like, oh, here comes Gelb working in Tom Brady once again. But maybe Tom Brady has fooled us all as NFL fans. And what I mean by that is Tom Brady played for 23, 24 years. Now everyone thinks their young quarterback's going to play for 20 plus years. That's one of one. That's an anomaly. So maybe with the Falcons, they look at it, okay, yes, we gave Kirk Cousins a 4-year deal, but we could find a way to get out of it after 2 years. And then you're looking at Michael Penix Jr. being 26 or 27 if it's 2 to 3 years. And if he could give us 8 or 9 great years, then he'll be 34, 35. Like if I say to you, get 8 or 9 great years out of your quarterback, you would sign up for that. So maybe that's how the Falcons, and it's the only way the Falcons look good here, but I think the Falcons are a little naive because the difference with the Packers and the Falcons is the Falcons and their fans have no emotional attachment to Kirk Cousins. There was an emotional attachment to Aaron Rodgers. He was the rock star. He was the guy. People were annoyed with the pick, and they never wanted to see Aaron Rodgers off the field. Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles injury. That takes time to recover. Like, even if you're on the field, mentally, there's still things that you have to overcome. He has a few games, like back-to-back games where he struggles, and you have Michael Penix Jr., who's not a developmental project. He's NFL ready. You think Falcons fans are going to care about the money? No, they're going to be calling for Michael Penix Jr. And then this genius plan, this creative plan, and I say that kind of rolling my eyes, then it's going to blow up in your face before the end of year one with Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. And the other part, too, is they talk about, and you heard Raheem Morris talk about, we're not going to be picking here again. We're going to be winning. Okay, you're probably right. This team this year should be winning 9 or 10 games. But there's a difference in winning and actually winning. When I talk about actually winning, I talk about going for a Super Bowl run. They'll just be winning where they'll win their division and probably do nothing else. They could have drafted a defensive player. They could have drafted Rome Odunze on offense, another big-time playmaker, and actually gave you a chance in a weaker NFC. This is the AFC where it's loaded, where you could actually contend. But they want to try to get the best now and also the best in the future, and that doesn't usually line up in being able to win a Super Bowl. Here is the GM, Terry Fontenot, on drafting Michael Penix Jr.
Very excited about today, about the outcome of today, being able to add Michael Penix Jr. When you can add a high-caliber player like that with his intangibles, those tools, he's a winner. Very, very excited. You don't pass up that opportunity.
You can.
And Kirk Cousins is our quarterback. We're very excited about Kirk, very excited about this team. And Michael Penix we're talking about the future. The draft is, you look at the future and you look at big picture, but we are very excited about that quarterback room. And again, Kirk is our quarterback, but adding Michael Penix is thinking about the future.
Whenever you have to say who your quarterback is, he's only your quarterback for so long. Like, you're in a good relationship, but you know that this isn't going to go to marriage, but you've been dating for a few months, and you have your eyes wandering already, and you're trying to secure who you're going to pursue once you break up with Kirk Cousins. And you basically told Michael Penix Jr. to move in right next door. Or you basically created him a guest room and said, hey, go take some real estate in the guest room. Like, what are you doing? That, to me, is just a bad sale job by one Terry Fontenot. And it's something I just roll my eyes at, and I can't really believe him. Now, here's the one that really made me laugh. Because there's no way that Kirk Cousins is going to be the guy there for 4 years. At most, it's going to be 3 years. Probably going to be 2 years. But I'm trying to be open-minded. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to understand. I even said, you sit him 2 years, 3 years, then he's 26, 27. You get 8 or 9 great years out of him, then he's 34, 35. Okay, I'm hearing your vision. But when you start to tell me, Terry Fontenot, that Michael Penix Jr. could sit for 4 or 5 years, that's when I hit the floor, roll over, and keep on laughing. Here's Terry Fontenot basically saying that.
If you believe in a quarterback, you have to take him. And if he sits for 4 or 5 years, that's a great problem to have because we're doing so well at that position. So it's just as simple as if you see a guy that you believe in at that position, you have to take him.
4 or 5 years. The BS meter is at 1,000 listening to Terry Fontenot try to talk his way through this selection. Maybe it ends up working. We've seen controversial draft picks before that it ends up working. I gave you the formula how it could work. But if you were really going for this, if you were really trying to win now, which you were trying to do bringing in Kirk Cousins, try to get to a second round, try to get to an NFC title game, then you would have bolstered the defense or bolstered the offense for the now. Not try to set up for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now. It's just something that it makes me roll your eyes. And I know what Samter's going to say. I know exactly what you're going to say because I saw you roll your eyes when I talked about Kirk Cousins. You're probably going to say, well, Kirk Cousins not really a winning quarterback. He's not a guy you go win a Super Bowl with. Then why'd you pay him $160 million? Like, you knew you had 8. If you didn't really believe in Kirk Cousins when you brought him in, you should have just not brought him in, saved the money, go improve your team in free agency, and then draft the quarterback that you wanted at 8. Michael Penix Jr. is NFL ready. This is not a developmental project. This guy is ready to play. So I'm trying to hear what the Falcons are selling. I'm trying to see their reason. But yes, still, even after having it marinate for a little bit, I would not have done what they did last night. I would have taken Rome Odunze. 855-212-4227. Do you agree with what the Falcons did? We will take a timeout when we come on back. If you would have told me last night that Bo Nix would have gone at 12, I would say that's the biggest surprise of the first round. Ends up not being the biggest surprise because it was Penix at 8 to the team that he went to in the Atlanta Falcons. Do you trust what Sean Payton is doing with the Denver Broncos? I'll give you my take next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show. We opened up the program with the stunning news that Michael Penix Jr. is now the backup to Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, and the Falcons had to use the 8th overall pick on him. Now we will go to the last quarterback that was picked to the first round, and it was with the 12th pick of the draft, and that was the Denver Broncos selecting Bo Nix. So you try to separate this time of the year when you see things go down, what was the narrative and then what was the reality? So we all knew, right, as of yesterday, anyone could have told you that Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May were going to be the first 3 picks of the draft. That was the narrative, and that ended up being the reality. Then the thought process was, and I gave you my quarterback rankings, and I said I have Michael Penix Jr. rated in front of J.J. McCarthy. But everyone's telling me, and I believed it too, that J.J. was going to get selected in front of Michael Penix Jr. That was the narrative. It wasn't the reality, with the Falcons surprising everybody and taking Michael Penix Jr. at 8. And there was talks of other teams interested in Michael Penix Jr. for what I was reading. I remember the Seahawks being one of them, the Saints potentially being one as well, that were potentially looking to trade up to get Michael Penix Jr. So once you have the first surprise, after that, there's a domino effect. And that means that there were 2 potential first-round quarterbacks left when you had 4 go in the first 8 picks. And those 2 quarterbacks were J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix. So once the Falcons selected Michael Penix Jr., the antenna was already up for the Minnesota Vikings, who tried to get to 3 and tried to execute a deal with the Patriots, just like the Giants reportedly did as well. But once you lose out on Drake May, then you have to panic. And they went from 11 to 10. Now, I know Sean Payton just did a press conference a few moments ago, and he said that they tricked Minnesota thinking that they wanted J.J. McCarthy to protect their pick of their guy with Bo Nix. So I don't know what's true and what is false of that. But Minnesota did trade up 1 spot, and they swapped with the Jets and added some other picks to New York so the Vikings could go get J.J. McCarthy. Let me be clear. J.J. McCarthy, I think, can be a good quarterback. The fit for J.J. McCarthy was everything. And for the last 2 weeks, I think every day I got on the radio and I said, J.J. McCarthy goes to the Giants, J.J. McCarthy goes to the Patriots, will be a disaster. But landing in Minnesota for him is massive because you get Justin Jefferson, you get Jordan Addison, you get an offensive-minded coach in Kevin O'Connell who's had some success in this league, and then you still have Aaron Jones right now, at least for this year, in your backfield. So I believe McCarthy, I didn't think he should have been a top 10 pick. I think he was going to be, though, a top 10 pick, even though I would not have done it. But for Minnesota, there was panic, there was need, there was a concern because they no longer have Kirk Cousins. And them getting McCarthy was pretty damn good. And I think he could have success there. And McCarthy is NFL ready. He should be starting week 1 over Sam Darnold. So once McCarthy goes off the board, then there was a decision to be made. Who was going to take Bo Nix? Right? Like, Stu, your Raiders, I don't know how you would have felt if they would have taken Bo Nix, but the Raiders were a team that they thought, all right, if one of these quarterbacks fall, it probably would have been Penix or McCarthy. You would have been one of the landing spots at 13. Not the case. All 6 are off the board. The Saints were even talked about potentially being one of those landing spots if a quarterback was going to fall. And then the last destination would have been the Seattle Seahawks. And then during this week, you started to hear some buzz. And I will say, and I've said this before, I am always skeptical of the buzz that you hear leading up to the draft. But sometimes things come out of left field, and they're so bizarre that even though you don't want to believe it, you may start to say, that's got a chance of being true. And I would not have fully believed at 12 that Denver would have taken Bo Nix leading up to the draft. But maybe they would have found a way to move back up in the first round to go get him, because he was the guy that was a borderline first-round pick, and he ended up going 12th overall because Penix going 8 set this whole thing out of whack. So I know Sean Payton's going to tell you he knew this was his guy, and whether you believe that or not, that's up to you. But that's how he landed him, because you had a rush. You had Minnesota have to rush to go get McCarthy. You had Penix go off the board at 8. The Patriots did take a quarterback. Some people thought they weren't. And then Bo Nix goes to Denver. And my first reaction is, okay, what do I think of Bo Nix as a prospect? At Auburn, he was really disappointing. He didn't meet up to the hype at Auburn. When he went to Oregon, I would have never thought you would have been able to see this consistency from Bo Nix. And the last 2 years, Bo Nix played some stellar football. With all that being said, he had 2 opportunities this past year to beat Washington with Michael Penix Jr. and Rome Odunze, and he couldn't do that. When I'm taking a quarterback in the top 10, in the top 15, it sets an expectation that that quarterback's going to be great. I don't believe Bo Nix is going to be great. I think his ceiling is just being good. And I know everyone's going to slobber over the fact and make the comparisons to Drew Brees and say, oh, this is Sean Payton getting his guy. And I know Sean Payton is an offensive genius, all that stuff. But the luster and the shine of Sean Payton the last few years, at least for me, has worn off. Like, he made it out he was retiring with the Saints. He retired and he walked away to go do the Fox gig for 1 year because he wasn't in the spot where he had a quarterback. And then when he gets back in on a job, and we all know he wanted the Chargers job a year before, but the Chargers didn't fire Brandon Staley at that time. And eventually they did right because they got Jim Harbaugh the next year. But for Sean Payton, he didn't really want to make it work with Russell Wilson. And I didn't like how that whole thing did go down. And now you look at this Broncos team, what do they really have? Like, I look at their weapons. They don't have a number 1 wide receiver. And maybe that changes. I know they don't have a second-round pick. But right now, they don't have a number 1 wide receiver. Javonte Williams, I like him, but he's hurt a lot. And I just look at, okay, you got the piece, but it's not as if you could sit Bo Nix because he's 24. Like, he should be starting week 1. You can't throw out Zach Wilson on week 1. That would be stupid. Like, this guy's NFL ready. He's ready to go. And if he can't beat out the other garbage QBs on this roster, then he shouldn't have been the 12th overall pick of the draft. So I do think Bo will be the best QB on their roster. I do think Bo will be starting week 1. But I think a lot of people are going to say, okay, this is Sean finding his next Drew Brees, and who would have expected Drew Brees would have gone on to the career and the illustrious career that he had when he elected to go to New Orleans. But I don't think this magic is going to happen again. And Denver, and I know this is kind of a weak argument at times, but there have just been teams for years that just mess up the quarterback position. And ever since number 18 won a Super Bowl and walked off into the sunset, that quarterback position for the Broncos has been a disaster. And I may be being polite when I say a disaster. You could list like 7 or 8 guys that have failed there. So if Sean thinks it could work, you take your guy when you could get him. but this does feel like a reach for the Denver Broncos. And I don't think this is going to work out where a few years from now we're like, Sean's a genius. This is why Sean's a Hall of Fame coach. The Broncos, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. Like, do you think the Chiefs today are shaking in their boots because the Broncos drafted Bo Nix? Does this close the gap at all or sets it up for the future to close the gap? No. It's like the Raiders, they got Brock Bowers. Sure, the Raiders have a bunch of weapons. The tight end from Notre Dame. You got Bowers out of Georgia. You got Devontae Adams. Like, you got some pieces there. You got Jacoby Myers, but you don't have a quarterback. And then for the Chargers, you have a quarterback. You beefed up that offensive line. But now with no longer having Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, you got to improve those weapons. Now, I'll believe in Jim Harbaugh. I'll believe in Justin Herbert. But in all likelihood, they're probably going to be the second team for years to come in that division. You need a superstar to contend in that division at the quarterback situation. You need a superstar to go compete with Patrick Mahomes. And I know that's not an easy task. But I don't look at Bo Nix at 12 as a necessity. I don't think Bo Nix has a ceiling of being a superstar. I think at best, if everything comes together for Bo Nix when he's with Sean in Denver, it's just being a good quarterback. And just being a good quarterback in the AFC isn't really going to win you Jack Bleep. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a timeout. We will recap the first round of the NFL Draft, which was the craziest first round of the NFL Draft I've ever seen, with Mike Renner, who's a great NFL Draft analyst. He was on the show last night with Lefko, Micah Parsons, and C.J. Stroud, which I thought was a fascinating listen. I thought Saban was great before the draft. I thought Belichick with McAfee was great. Belichick showing a little bit of a personality. Who would have thought that? But we got a whole lot more to do on the other side when we connect with Mike Renner. This is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Here is the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
Oh, the NFL's popularity is at an all-time high, and Commissioner Roger Goodell said on the Pat McAfee Show earlier today he's eyeing an 18-game season and a President's Day weekend Super Bowl. The second and third rounds of the draft will be held tonight in Detroit. Quarterbacks dominated the round one with 6 taken in the first 12. Also 7 wideouts and 7 offensive tackles were selected as well. The Bills will start things off tonight with the 33rd pick overall. Baseball this afternoon in Detroit right now. Bottom of the 9th. The Royals with 7 in the top of the inning lead the Tigers by a score of 8-0. The NBA playoffs continue with 3 first-round series. The Mavericks are back home to host the Clippers after tying things up at 1. Also, the Pacers take on the Bucks after a win in Milwaukee on Tuesday, in which they scored 125 points. And Milwaukee will be without Giannis Antetokounmpo again due to a strained calf. The Timberwolves have jumped down to a 2-0 lead on the Suns, with Game 3 tonight in Phoenix, and Kansas big man Hunter Dickinson is returning to school for another year. I'm Rich Ackman.
Hey, like us on Facebook. Our handle is INF Sportsnet. That's INF Sportsnet for our Facebook page. This is the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show. We're talking draft, and more draft after the craziness of last night. That is the craziest first round of an NFL draft that I've ever seen. One of the best NFL draft analysts is Mike Renner, and he's kind enough to join us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Mike, I know it's a busy time of the year for you, so I appreciate you giving us a few minutes today.
For sure. It's busy, but it's the best time of the year, in my opinion.
Well, let me start you off with this. I'm going to actually start you off with Bo Nix, because I would have never believed that Michael Penix Jr. would have been the pick at 8, but I really would have never believed that Bo Nix would have been the 12th pick of this draft. I know he's going to be working with Sean Payton. We know what his track record is in this league, but what do you think Bo Nix could turn into as an NFL quarterback with the Denver Broncos?
You're probably talking to the biggest Bo Nix fan in the NFL draft media right now. I watched his tape and did the final eval on him back in January after the Senior Bowl, and I was just watching. I was like, this guy is built for Sean Payton's offense. Like after that, I mocked him to the Broncos, I think, every single time, just because of what he does in that offense at Oregon, and obviously what Sean Payton has done for the course of his career with the Saints and now with the Denver Broncos and what they want to do. And it's the quick passing game. He was the best quick passer in this draft class. And I think a lot of people want to pigeonhole him into that. And it's like that he could only do that. But he put up statistically one of the greatest seasons of all time at the collegiate level. He broke the NCAA completion percentage record this past fall. And he didn't do it with first-round wide receivers. He didn't do it with first-round offensive linemen. Like a lot of it was Bo Nix just being high-level processing in terms of like being able to read defenses quickly, get the ball where it needs to go. Now, a lot of that's what Sean Payton's going to ask me to do. It's throw underneath, read the defense, get the ball there on time. And now when things kind of broke down, when he had to get to a second, third read, I think that's when he saw Bo Nix struggle. But he couldn't have gone to a better situation for him. And I think that's why Sean Payton was saying, to everyone who would listen to him yesterday, that I was watching the tape and I was like, this guy's a lot better than people are letting on. So if he would have gone elsewhere, I might not have been as high on him, but where he went with Denver Broncos, I think he can succeed.
Now, when we talk about succeeding, what does that mean? Because fair or not, he's in a division that for the foreseeable future has Patrick Mahomes standing in his way as a giant roadblock with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, there's different levels of franchise quarterback, right? And I don't think if you're the Broncos picking at 12, no, you're never going to get to the Mahomes level, right? In this quarterback class, no one was going to let you trade up to the top three. Obviously, all three of those teams wanted the guys they got. And I think those were the guys in this class with that kind of ceiling, right? But I do think that quarterbacks on rookie contracts, at least, when you got them for these next 4 years, and with Bo Nix, with his experience, 5 years of college football, should hit the ground fairly ready. There shouldn't be this massive transition for him, that you just need to build out the roster around him. And obviously, roster is depleted as well. It may take a few years, but year 3, year 4, when you're not paying him a ton of money, maybe then you can start to compete. So there are levels to this in terms of like how good his ceiling could possibly be, but it's the first piece. And now you put the rest of the pieces around him in Denver.
Talking to Mike Renner right now. All righty, let's go back to 8. I was talking to Arthur Blank at the Super Bowl, and he said to me, sometimes to find the long-term solution, you got to find an interim solution first. I don't really know too many interim solutions that cost you $100 million guaranteed, but now you got Kirk Cousins there and also Michael Penix Jr. The next day, are you in on this pick of Penix Jr. at 8, or are you out like most people?
As a Packers fan, lifelong Packers fan, I really can't criticize the pick, right? This was what the Packers have done twice famously over the last 20 years with Aaron Rodgers and then Jordan Love, and both times it's worked out. And so if you are Raheem Morris, new head coach, this basically gives you a runway of, we never have to worry about the quarterback position while I'm here. And that's something that if you want long-term job security as a head coach, this is your path towards that, because now year 3, year 4 of Kirk Cousins' contract, when they obviously, when it starts to, they can get out from under that, maybe his play starts to slip. That's when Michael Penix Jr. is going to be handling your offense. And there's no like big transition period for him. He's already mastered. He's been in the system for forever. So I think I see the rationale, but in this class specifically, with guys like Rome Odunze on the board there, with guys like Olu Fashanu on the board there, with guys like Dallas Turner, Byron Murphy on the defensive side on the board there, like those are darn good prospects that maybe in another class where, when Tyree Wilson went 8 last year, I would have maybe gone quarterback then. I didn't think he was that great of a prospect to go top 10. It was just a different class. But in this one specifically, it's just hard for me to see the rationale with how quickly you could have taken over the NFC South drafting one of those guys I just mentioned.
If you could give Terry Fontenot a do-over today, do you think he would have never issued that contract to Kirk Cousins if he knew that he was going to end up drafting Michael Penix Jr. at 8?
I don't think so. Honestly, I think he believes in it. And I think the coaching staff believes in it too. I don't think they have any reservations about their process here. So no, I think that they just want as many swings at this quarterback position as they can. And if you're the Falcons and you've had a quarterback after Matt Ryan, it's hard for me to really be too upset about that for them.
All righty, let's get to the Bears. We all knew Caleb Williams was going to be the number 1 overall pick. I know a lot of people thought Dunze was going to go there 9. I didn't think he was going to be available, but they get him there. With what Williams is walking into with Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore, I know the Bears haven't had a franchise quarterback in like forever, but if they can't make this one work, then this franchise is just cursed, right?
Yeah, somewhere Justin Fields is crying into a pillow because, I mean, like, he's just like, where were any of these guys? He didn't have any of these guys, over the course of his Bears career. And so for Caleb Williams, he doesn't even really have to be, all he's billed to be, right? Like, this is enough talent that, like a Brock Purdy could succeed with this. Like an average quarterback could be elevated into putting up good numbers with the wide receiver talent. So it's a unique situation. And man, what a year to have the number one pick and what they had in this draft class. For Ryan Poles, like, there was really the sky really is the limit for this team. Maybe not year one. Obviously, it's a rookie quarterback. But if you're not thinking Super Bowl year 2, year 3, or 4 with what they have in this roster, if they're not in that mix, I'd be surprised.
Do you think the better quarterback, Mike Renner, will be Jaden Daniels or Drake May when it's all said and done?
I think it's Drake May. I trend towards youth at the quarterback position in terms of like when a guy figured it out. I think we saw, with Kenny Pickett, how when a guy really, after a lot of years of starting, starts to figure it out, that it can be fool's gold to a degree. And just not to say fool's gold. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be a darn good quarterback, but I just think May has special ability. What he did as a redshirt freshman at North Carolina was high-end stuff. And I think his NFL readiness is being undersold a little bit because I flip on his tape versus Jaden Daniels' tape, and Daniels has 2 first-round wide receivers. He might have 2 first-round offensive tackles going next year. And he could just kind of facilitate and just put it in their hands, and they made the plays. If Drake May wanted to win games, it was on his arm. He had to make the plays himself. He had to put it to perfect spots for his guys to then create. So I'll give me that all day, every day, because at the NFL level, that's what wins. Facilitating can only get you so far, and especially when you're going to play behind the kind of offensive line Daniels is about to get subjected to. So, yeah, May has no talent around him as well, but I think I'll just lean towards the youth guy starting to develop more than Daniels at his age.
Do you buy the Ayuk? Do you buy the Deebo Samuel rumors with the Patriots who have the second pick in the second round tonight?
I do, because for the 49ers, it's just untenable, right? You can't pay all those guys. They're going to have like highest paid, like top 3 wide receiver, top 3 edge, top 3 off-ball linebacker. They're going to have to pay Purdy here in a couple of years. Like, the cap situation at some point becomes such that one of them has to be moved. And then they just drafted a wide receiver in the first round who, with Kyle Shanahan's offense, he won't see the field otherwise if they keep those 2 guys there. So, yeah, I'm buying that one of those guys gets moved tonight.
Mike Renner, who was the pick last night? Like, like Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, I think he's the best player in the draft. Him going forward to the Cardinals, I absolutely love it. But who was the player in the draft last night that you were like, where he went to, the fit, let's say it's not a quarterback, that was one that really impressed, if you want to give me a name or 2?
I'll give you 2 then. I really liked Byron Murphy to the Seattle Seahawks. I had him as a top 10 player. I had him as the best defensive player. I thought his upward trajectory towards the end of the season is exactly what I want to buy into. And then obviously, like, his combine was off the charts for a 300-pounder who can play anywhere along the defensive line. He showed at Texas. So for the Seahawks to get him at 16, when it's like, that's exactly what Mike McDonald wanted for his defense. He wanted his Justin Matabuki there in the middle. That was an awesome fit. And then Terrion Arnold to the Lions. If you mocked Terrion Arnold to the Lions in the last month, people would have said you're crazy. He ain't falling that far, right? All of a sudden, and they get to jump the Packers to do so. The Packers would have ran that card in at 25, I think, to get a guy like Terrion Arnold. So kind of the one piece. They had one need at corner on this Lions team that was kind of built and had no real holes after free agency and the work they've done this offseason. The one thing they needed was a guy who a lot of people has the number 1 cornerback in this draft class. Get him all the way at 24. I thought that was a great pick.
I like what the Vikings did. I know they trade up the 1 spot, but I thought if McCarthy's going to succeed, he needed to go to the Vikings compared to the Giants or the Patriots. But then to also get Dallas Turner too, I would have never thought. I know no defensive player went until pick 15, but I would never thought Dallas Turner would have been available at 17.
Yeah, the Turner fit, I couldn't believe. To now have him and Grenard, and everyone talks about them losing Danielle Hunter, their pass rush might be better this year, now that they have 2 guys that can actually get after the quarterback. Because Dallas Turner, in a weaker class, I keep raving about how good the top of this class was, but, you go back 2 years ago when Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson go 1 and 2, he's probably a top 3 pick in that draft, Dallas Turner. That's the kind of talent we're talking about. It's a guy who could have gone top 5. It's just such a stacked class. So for them to get him at 17, and yeah, they gave up a little bit in the trade, but they didn't have to give up any future first rounders to get a primetime pass rusher and a primetime quarterback, the 2 most valuable positions from a cap perspective in the NFL. I think that's a great move from Kwesi.
Who's the wide receiver Buffalo's taking tonight with the first pick of the second round?
I keep saying Adonai Mitchell, the Texas wide receiver, to them. If there's any guy left on the board that I could see being a number one, and that's what they need, right? They got the ancillary piece in Curtis Samuel. They got the tight ends there. They need the stud number one type of wide receiver. He has those kind of tools. So that's who I think they were fine trading back for, because I think he's off a lot of teams' boards because of some of the off-field stuff that he has that he's going through. But for the Buffalo Bills, they just dealt with Stephon Diggs for a while. I think they're fine with some off-field issues there and the guy who maybe have some locker room concerns. So, yeah, I think Adonai Mitchell is the guy that I'm looking for if I'm the Buffalo Bills.
I only got 45 to 60 seconds left, Mike Renner. Just give me a few names to monitor early tonight after that.
Yeah, I love him, and I love Jackson Powers-Johnson, the Oregon center. I couldn't believe he didn't go in the first round. He had some of the best tape I've seen from a center in recent years. And then I'll also throw in the corners. Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, first-round grades on both those guys. They should go early.
He's Mike Renner. Mike, I love the coverage last night with Lefko and Parsons and C.J. Stroud. It was good to see you, obviously, on there. Your coverage is always great. Appreciate you jumping on board with us for a few minutes today.
For sure, Zach. Thanks for having me on, man.
There you go. He is Mike Renner, one of the best NFL draft analysts in the country, breaking down all these prospects and all the craziness from what was round one last night that saw 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks, no defensive player until pick number 15. And when stuff like that happens, early picks tonight in the second round, you're going to have a lot of guys that you're looking at and said, wow, I can't believe that guy was there. And I can't believe that guy wasn't a first-round pick. And you even started to see it last night when we talked about some of those players, like a Byron Murphy out of Texas being there at 16 to Seattle, Dallas Turner being there at 17 to the Minnesota Vikings, Quinyon Mitchell, 22, to the Philadelphia Eagles. He was rising as a top 15 pick. Terrion Arnold, 24, to the Detroit Lions. Darius Robinson, 27, out of Missouri, to the Cardinals. Just a few of those names as well. Okay, we're coming on back. We got some more NFL draft reaction for you.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
I'll give you my thoughts on what the Patriots did coming up in a moment. I will also tell you one quarterback who's already under a tremendous amount of pressure next season with what his team did last night. And no, it's not Kirk Cousins. We'll eliminate him. Kirk Cousins, though, is under a lot of pressure. But that's some pressure I would like to have. Like, I know I got $100 million guaranteed. Sure, my team drafted a quarterback with the 8th overall pick, so I probably won't see all 4 years of that contract. It will probably only be 2 years, but I know I'm going to, bare minimum, get $100 million out of the $160 million, regardless of what happens. But when I take a look at that kind of scenario, I'll just ask you this question before I give you some winners from last night. Did the Falcons owe it to Kirk Cousins to really, give him a heads up? Like, they just called him when they were making the pick, and he felt like he was blindsided by it. Now, with who his agent is and Kirk Cousins not being a youngster in this league and being a veteran, if, let's just say, they got wind a day or two before that this team was going to draft Michael Penix Jr., I don't think Kirk Cousins plays dirty, but would his agent have played a little bit dirty where you start leaking that out? Oh, Falcons interested in Michael Penix Jr. to maybe get one of those other teams to try to trade up to, I don't know, maybe 7 or 6 to try to usurp the Falcons in their quest to go get Michael Penix Jr. so Kirk Cousins can actually see the entirety of that 4-year contract in Atlanta. Samter, do you believe... let me get your reaction on the pick by the Falcons for Michael Penix Jr., but also, do you think that the Falcons had to go out of their way instead of just make a last-second phone call to notify Kirk Cousins that, hey, they were going to end up taking a quarterback last night with the 8th overall pick?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, and how about the initial reaction to Michael Penix Jr. going at 8?
I mean, I get why Kurt feels that way, but you're a big boy. You're getting paid big boy money. It's a big boy league. it's unfortunate. I feel for him. Maybe he wishes he went to the Raiders or somebody else instead, but he's getting paid big-time money. I don't feel a lot of sympathy for him. At the end of the day, this is what the NFL is. It's a surprise pick. Kirk will just have to do kind of like what Terry Fontenot said, just be so good that we can't play Penix. And if that's the case, then they're going to win games. They're going to go to the playoffs, and they're going to keep him around longer than they probably want to.
So I've had no read on you with this situation because last night I thought at first like you were on board with it, and then as the night did go on, it sounded like you were basically saying, all right, this is stupid, and now it seems like you're understanding of what they did. So what is your opinion, I'm asking, on where you're at? Like, you were making that pick at 8, knowing that this was an option. What would you have done?
I'm definitely not doing what the Falcons did.
Okay, so you're out on what they did.
I'm not out on what they did. I just wouldn't have done it. However, as we heard from Arthur Blank, I understand this idea. Like, having a quarterback for a year or two does a team no good.
Sure.
In order to build
unless you win a Super Bowl, which I don't think the Falcons are doing.
Sure, but even look at the Rams, right? They won their Super Bowl. Awesome.
Yeah.
But Stafford's going to be gone. They really haven't done much.
Who cares? You won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but they won the Super Bowl. So I guess the question is, do you want that one fleeting moment?
Yes.
Or do you want 10 or 12 years of excellence, right? Do you want
But am I getting a Super Bowl? Like, you say excellence. If you say excellence 10 or 12 years and I get a Super Bowl, obviously I'd rather have the 10 or 12 years of excellence with a Super Bowl. But if I just have 10 or 12 years where I'm consistently in the mix as, let's say, a division winner, going to a few NFC title games, maybe a Super Bowl appearance, I don't want that. I want to win the Super Bowl. So even if I win a Super Bowl and I make a deal with the devil and then I suck for the next decade, yeah, I'm more than fine with that.
I mean, and maybe a Super Bowl. But when I say like 10, 12 years of excellence, I mean think about like the Peyton Manning Colts, right? They won a title, sure, but they were great for like 13 straight years, and then they fell short a lot. The Cowboys winning 12 games every year and then falling short in the playoffs. Would you rather have that, where you're just winning 12 games year after year after year, 10 games, winning divisions?
Well, it's two different scenarios, because you say the Colts won a Super Bowl.
I'm using that as a general idea, Super Bowl or not, just the idea of 10, 12 years of really good, great, even football. Maybe it culminates in the Super Bowl, maybe it doesn't. But at the end of the day, it's just really good winning football for a extended period of time.
Compared to what, 2 years of winning a Super Bowl?
2 years where like you're contending, maybe winning a Super Bowl for like 2 years of like excellent football, which I don't think that Kirk Cousins is going to give them that anyway. But
what are we doing?
Do you want what the Rams did, like 1 or 2 years of really good
football?
football?
What the Rams
or
did.
12 years of like excellent football that may or may not end up in a title?
Without a doubt. I know that you're now like a Chiefs fan, so you're used to winning. But if you were a Jet fan and I said to you, would you rather have 10 to 12 years where you don't win a Super Bowl, but you're consistently there, you're contending, or you win a Super Bowl and then you miss the playoffs, then you make the playoffs, and now who knows what they're going to look like in 3-4 years? Without a doubt, I'm taking the Super Bowl. If I could get my hands on a Super Bowl trophy and I don't care what happens after that, I'm not running the chance of, oh, I could be really good. Like I could be the Bills, right? I could be right there, but then I don't get over the hump. I'm taking the Super Bowl when it's guaranteed and when it's signed, sealed, and delivered to me 10 times out of 10. I don't even think that's like Stu, let me ask you this. You're a Raiders fan, right? Stu in his lifetime, his team has been to the Super Bowl once.
Yes.
And then after that, for the most part, you have been an unmitigated disaster.
2 playoff appearances, 0-2 since the Super Bowl.
Is that right?
Yes.
So the year where Carr got hurt.
Yes. And then the year Carr's second to last year where they lost to the Bengals.
Oh, the Bengals.
Yes.
That's right, where he threw the
2
pick.
games. I've gone 2 games, and one was with a third-string quarterback.
So let me ask you this. Would you rather, Stu, I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I think you know the answer.
I have a bleeping and grin on my face when I say this. Would you rather have a Super Bowl and then be terrible for a decade? Which the Rams aren't going to be terrible for a decade, but let's just say that's the case. You win a Super Bowl, then you're terrible for a decade, or have a 10 to 12-year run where you have the quarterback, you're right there, 12, 13 wins a year, division title after division title, but it's not guaranteed that you win a Super Bowl. It's like 50-50.
Yeah, give me the Super Bowl. I don't care what happens after that.
Okay. So the Falcons, I don't think, this is why I can't do this conversation with the Falcons, because I don't think the Falcons are winning a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. I think with Kirk Cousins, the most they're doing is getting to an NFC championship game if everything goes right. But I thought they needed to improve the roster a little bit more. And I know the draft's not over yet, but you had the 8th overall pick in a draft where no defensive player did go yet. And you still had who I thought was the second best wide receiver in this draft class in Rome Odunze available. And you could have got one of those guys to go actually try and go for it in an NFC that doesn't have much certainty and doesn't have much clarity. That, to me, is why I'm out on this decision. But I also think what the Falcons are trying to sell you last night isn't reality. The Falcons are talking about sitting Michael Penix for 4 or 5 years. He turns 24 next month. All right, in like a few weeks. Kirk Cousins is playing 2 years, 2, in Atlanta. And then it's going to be Michael Penix Jr. time. So I like Michael Penix Jr. I think Michael Penix Jr. could be a good pro. If Kirk Cousins was not there, then this would have been a good draft pick, but he is there. And that's what makes me question this pick. And I would say 2 things. Like Samter threw out a good point. Would Kirk Cousins have still signed in Atlanta if he knew this was going to be the case? I don't know if he is. Like, if I know how this played out last night, let's look at the Raiders, for example. They have Michael Mayer now. They have Brock Bowers. You have, at the wide receiver position, Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. Stu, who the heck's your running back for this year? Is it Zach Moss?
It is going to be Zamir White.
Oh, Zamir White.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you have a question at the running back. But, like Kirk Cousins going there, they could be a playoff team. They could. I'm not saying they're a lock to be a playoff team because the AFC is such a logjam, but at least you would have been the guy for the duration of that contract. You go to a place like Atlanta, yeah, you get your money, which I think a lot of people will have no sympathy for him, which I understand. But you didn't even get to settle into your house before your house was already put on the market and someone's already trying to buy your house. And that, to me, is the part where I do feel bad for Kirk Cousins. I know it's easy to say, oh, he has $100 million guaranteed. That's fine. Yeah, I would like to be Kirk Cousins. But I can still feel bad for him. And I asked this to Mike Renner, and he said no. I think this would absolutely be a yes. If we had to inject Terry Fontenot with truth serum today, and I said to Terry Fontenot, would you still, if I told you at 8 you could have got Michael Penix Jr., would you still have signed Kirk Cousins? If he says yes, I'm just not buying that. I'm not buying that whatsoever. All righty. Here's what I love from the draft last night. You know, the Bears, I know it's an easy take, but out of the first round, just because you have the number 1 overall pick doesn't always mean you win the draft. But what the Bears did last night in securing Caleb Williams and then just saying, hey, at 9, we got stuff on offense. We got DJ Moore. You know, we got Keenan Allen. They didn't just say, oh, we'll take a defensive player just for the sake of taking a defensive player because none were off the board then. They said, we're going to take the best player available. And at the time, the best player available was Rome Odunze. I love what the Bears did. And I said this to Mike, and I'll say it again. If the Bears can't contend in the NFC with the foundation that they've built, if they can't, in 5 years from now, if we're talking about Caleb Williams as being a bust, if we're saying he stinks, another guy that we hyped up that didn't live up to what the noise was about him, then the Bears are just never going to get it right. You look at what they've done the last few years, and you look as a quarterback, what you're walking into here, this is magnificent. And usually quarterbacks go to die or have their career ruined when you are a member of the Chicago Bears. So I love what the Bears did last night. I will also give credit to 2 other teams that were able to double dip. The best player in this draft is Marvin Harrison Jr. Cardinals get him. But then later on, the Cardinals need to just keep on taking talented guys because their roster is pretty bare. Like Kyler Murray in the NFC, you could be a good quarterback and win. In the AFC, you got to be great. And I believe Kyler Murray could still be good. So you get him a legit number 1 weapon in Marvin Harrison Jr., and then you bolster your defense with a defensive-minded head coach in Jonathan Gannon, and you get Darius Robinson out of Missouri, the edge rusher. Love what the Arizona Cardinals did. And then the Minnesota Vikings. I understand J.J. McCarthy's polarizing. I understand people say, oh, why'd they trade up from 11 to 10? They didn't need to do that, blah, blah, blah. Forget about that. Once you had the 4 quarterbacks go off the board, and I didn't think Penix was in play for them, but once May stood at 3 and stayed at 3 with the Patriots, you had to get J.J. McCarthy. And they ended up getting him. And now McCarthy walks into a place with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and also Aaron Jones. I think J.J. McCarthy can be good in Minnesota. And then you're able to go get Dallas Turner at 17? Hello. Dallas Turner, I thought was going to be a top 10 pick in this draft. I thought he was going to be the first defensive player off the board. So that's a heck of a value pick for the Minnesota Vikings. And Mike Renner said, I agree with him. You put him in that draft class, Dallas Turner, where you had Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and Kayvon Thibodeau. I wonder how many guys he would have gone in front. Like, I thought Hutchinson should have been the number 1 overall pick in this draft. I think that Trayvon Walker is not as good as Dallas Turner. Thibodeau, that's a tough one because I was a big fan of Thibodeau coming out of Oregon. So those are 3 teams I love what they did. The Vikings, the Bears, and the Cardinals. Now, let's get to my team. It's crazy how much now I have warmed up to what the Patriots ended up doing. May the force be with Drake May. But I don't know when he should see the field. And that is dependent on what they do in the next few hours. There are rumors of my BFF and Deebo Samuel, which I will reconcile with Deebo Samuel if he's a member of the Patriots. There are rumors of Brandon Ayuk. That's who I want. That they could get traded for the 34th overall pick. Go get the established guy. But if not, whether it's Mitchell or McConkey or whoever the wide receiver is, if you're keeping the second pick in the second round, you got to take a wide receiver. You got to surround this quarterback with some young talent or some established talent. And if it's young, unestablished talent, like taking a receiver with 34th overall pick, I'm not rushing to play Drake May in year 1. I'm waiting until November. But if they get a Deebo, if they get an Ayuk, that could expedite the process of getting Drake May on the field. I'm a little bit more confident in this regime so far of Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo because it's clear Jonathan Kraft didn't make this decision, number 1. And number 2, they tried to get Calvin Ridley. They failed, but at least they tried. Belichick would have never done that. And that's not anti-Belichick. You guys know me. I love Belichick. And very appreciative of what he did, obviously. I'd be the biggest idiot in the world if I wasn't. And then you take a glance at now trying for Deebo or Ayuk. You got to get one of these guys. And if it's not this year, then you draft at 34 and then you go get a big-time playmaker in the next offseason. And then finally, I think there's a ton of pressure on Trevor Lawrence this year. Year 1, disaster. Blame it on Urban Meyer. Year 2, took a big step. And then year 3 was dealing with an injury and regressed. But this offseason, yes, they lost Calvin Ridley, but they were able to add in Gabe Davis. You already have Christian Kirk. You have a solid tight end in Evan Ingram, and now you draft Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver, out of LSU. And you have Travis Etienne, who's a do-it-all running back. There's no reason why the Jaguars don't get back to being a double-digit win team this year. Jacksonville's got to get it right, and Trevor Lawrence has to show why he is a franchise-altering type of player. Enormous amount of pressure on Trevor Lawrence this year. Let me take one quick phone call before we get to Brian Finneran on the other side. Let's go to Anthony in Myrtle Beach. He's next up on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Ant, what's happening?
What's happening, Zach?
Doing great. What do you got for me?
You spit a lot out at me, and I kind of lost my train of thought, and I agree with a lot of what you said. I think Chicago definitely are all in. Jerry should take notes. That's how you do it, as all in. I think Atlanta drafting that quarterback, that might be a trade proposal down the line as some sort of, get the wide receiver they need like you spoke of. I honestly think the Giants made a big mistake. They got a great wide receiver there, Malik, but who's throwing him the ball? Danny Jones? Come on, that was a waste. Complete waste.
I don't think it's a waste, and thanks for the phone call, Anthony, and here's why. If you don't love a quarterback, you just don't take a quarterback. If they don't love J.J. McCarthy and that was smoke, you don't take J.J. McCarthy. I think J.J. McCarthy would have been bad with the Giants. If you don't love Michael Penix Jr., then you don't take a quarterback. They didn't love a quarterback outside of Drake May, So they then took who they thought was the next best player available, and that's Malik Neighbors. Like the Giants, they got to build this thing up. They got talent on defense, but they don't have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't think the Falcons then try to trade Michael Penix Jr. If anything, you try to trade Kirk Cousins, but there's such a big dead cap hit that you can't even start to contemplate that until it gets to about $25 million when that comes your way 2 years from now. Got to play this year, got to play next year. We'll see if Penix ends up getting on the field, but it's tough to get out of that Kirk Cousins contract until you start to get into after year 2 of Kirk Cousins in the ATL. All righty, we'll take a timeout. Former Falcons wide receiver, now does a talk show in the Atlanta area. Brian Finneran will join us next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Infinity Sports Network.
It's time to Ask the Pros, where you, the listener, gets to ask us a question. It's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your questions at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag Ask the Pros. Be listening later in the show when we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. We know that the Falcons have become the biggest story of the draft with their controversial draft pick of Michael Penix Jr. when you already just signed Kirk Cousins and he has $100 million guaranteed and a 4-year contract. Let's welcome in a former Falcons wide receiver and Brian Finneran, who's kind enough to take a few minutes with us today. Brian, appreciate the time as always. How you been?
Good, Zach. How you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on. Let me get a little peel behind the curtain here. You're watching the draft last night. You see the Falcons make the 8th overall pick. It shocks everyone. And Michael Penix Jr., your first thought was what?
What the hell just happened? Baffled, confused, curious as to what their plan is, and slightly disgusted, to tell you the truth. I was blown away by that decision to do that. I mean, you just set it up perfectly. You go in free agency and get a guy like Kirk Cousins. I don't know what they told Kirk Cousins the plan was going to be, but I can probably guarantee you they didn't say they're going to take guy number 8 at your same position. So they had to call Kirk during the time they had to make the pick to inform him that's what they were doing. Apparently Kirk was blown away and stunned by the decision, and I just don't know what this team is doing, especially at the quarterback position and what their plan is the last 6 years, 5 or 6 years.
If you could give Terry Fontenot a do-over, do you think he would not have signed Kirk Cousins if he knew he was going to take Michael Penix Jr. at 8?
I would hope so. I mean, I don't know what general manager makes a move like that and then drafts a guy at number 8 that's not going to touch the field for 2 years. I mean, that's the hope, right? And I think he said at one point in that presser afterwards that I stayed up for some godforsaken reason at 12:15 in the morning, he talked about 4 or 5 years Kirk's still our quarterback. You know, 4 years, that means we're making the playoffs, we're doing good things, and, you know, Penix doesn't have to play. I'm like, holy crack. There's no way that's the real thing they want to do here. So, do-over, yeah, this doesn't happen again if he has a do-over. You know you're going to get Penix at 8. You don't pick up Kirk Cousins. You spend a lot of that free agency money on guys, on defensive ends that are free agents, wide receivers that are free agents, and you go load up and try to improve this defense and this football team as a whole.
And that's the thing. Like, I could understand this, and I like Michael Penix Jr. I could understand it if he wasn't ready and he was like 21. Okay, I could get that. He turns 24 in a few weeks. It's like, to me, this dude is NFL ready. I'm almost at a point, Brian, where it's crazy how this changes in one night. I don't even want to see Kirk Cousins play for the Falcons.
Dude.
I just want to rock and roll for the next decade, see what Michael Penix Jr. could do right now.
I got no problem with Michael Penix Jr. Zero. I think he's a stud. He can to hear Nick Saban and Bill Belichick talk about that guy last night during the different draft channels, glowingly, for sure. But now you got a quarterback, not necessarily competition, but you got a super uncomfortable situation where you got a $100 million guaranteed guy that's going to be there for a minimum of 2 years. Oh, he was probably hoping to be there more, moving his family to Atlanta, where his wife's from. I mean, what is his wife and in-laws thinking about this now? And what's he thinking about after they just did this? And I guarantee you, when they were courting and tampering with Kirk Cousins, allegedly tampering, they sure as hell didn't tell him at 8 we're going to take a quarterback. Because I'm not sure he would have came here if that was the case.
Talking to Brian Finner right now. Yeah, like how much of an issue from the player side in the locker room does that become? And I know Kirk is a professional, but you thought you were getting something, and we see the writing on the wall. I know Fontenot could say 4 or 5 years, and I know some fans will say, oh, I got $100 million guaranteed, so tell him to shut up. But there is a business, there is a personal side to this. But I'm Kirk Cousins. You got to know that 2 years from now, you're going to be gone. Like, I don't think he makes it to year 3 in Atlanta.
Right. No, the writing's on the wall now, and it's a shame. And you bring Kirk Cousins in here for one reason, and that's to win football games. The guy's done nothing but thrown for 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns. He had awful defenses up there in Minnesota for the most part, like ranked 26th, 28th, 25th ranked defenses. So they had to outscore everybody. Everybody wants to talk about how Kirk can't win the big one. Dude is putting up like 27 points a game and still not winning games because they couldn't stop anybody. So I just don't know. Like, the idea is to win now. Like, now what's the goal? You had a chance at number 8, and I tell you this, Zach, I'm keeping receipts for every one of the guys that went after Michael Penix Jr. It's not his fault. I'm looking at all 3 of the defensive ends. I'm looking at 2 of the cornerbacks. I'm looking at Rome Odunze, and maybe even throwing a couple of the tackles that look like freaking monsters when they started showing their highlights up there. I haven't watched the entire draft in years because I just get tired of it after the Falcons go. I watched the entire thing to see who went after Michael Penix and who we could have had instead. Watch their highlights and watch them shine. If a couple of those guys become all pros or rookie of the year, I mean, this could be one of the worst decisions a draft and a GM and an organization has made in a long time.
So I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, Brian Finneran. I'm with you. I would have taken Rome Odunze. Once you sign Kirk, I'm not drafting a quarterback, especially even though I like Michael Penix Jr. when he's about to turn 24. But did Brady kind of mess up us as fans, like all of our thinkings about this? Because now you draft a quarterback, you expect them to be there for 20 years. Like, if Michael Penix Jr. it doesn't get on the field until 2-3 years from now, and then still gives you 7 or 8 years, like, you take that, right? Like 7 or 8 great years.
Yeah, of course you do. Because that means you'd hopefully have 2 or 3 or 4 with, probably 2 legit, maybe 3 with Kirk, and maybe another couple postseason runs there. And then this kid takes over for 6 or 7 or 8 years, and he'll be 35 by that time. And hopefully you have some nice success. But I don't know. It's not what Tom Brady did is not sustainable. It's not even a real thing. It's a total joke, really. It was amazing that he was able to pull that crap off, and again, do the things he's done, not only in New England, but to go to Tampa and turn that whole culture around as well was as special as it gets. So that's not the norm. You see what happens when quarterbacks get old. They tear Achilles. That's Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. It just happens. You're asking your old-ass body to do too much stuff, and it can't do it.
What do you think you get out of Kirk Cousins this year? Because fair or not, you talk about coming back from an Achilles. There's physical, and then there's also a mental recovery that happens once you get back on the field. He plays a bad game or two. It's just natural when you have an NFL-ready quarterback that you just drafted at 8 that fans are going to want to say, who cares about the contract? Let's give Michael Penix Jr. a chance.
Yeah, and don't forget you're in Atlanta, and we had a situation kind of like this, not only when Chris Chandler was my quarterback when I first got to Atlanta, and then you bring in Michael Vick, and people in the crowd are wearing Michael Vick jerseys, and Chris Chandler's your starting quarterback, and you start getting a bit of a divide, not only in the stadium, but a little bit in the locker room and media-wise and this and that, and, you just hope that kind of stuff doesn't take place again. Even Matt Ryan had a tough time taking over Michael Vick, so it's a dynamic kind of interesting city where some of this stuff comes into play, even though you don't want it to. You just want to see football players go out there and play. But, yeah, you make a great point, Zach. If something goes bad or has a couple of bad games or bad picks, there's going to be some rumblings going on from the stands and media and everybody else. But with that said, I think Kirk Cousins is a consummate professional. I think he's going to be ready to rock and roll. I think this might drive him even more to have a successful season and make everybody around him better. So that's what I said before this whole thing draft yesterday took place. Kirk Cousins makes Kyle Pitts better, just like Matt Ryan made Kyle Pitts a Pro Bowler his rookie year. He makes Bijan Robinson better. He makes Drake London better. He's going to make Darnell Mooney better. So I think he has a successful season. I think he stays healthy, and the Falcons hopefully do something in the next 7 picks to address the defensive hole that they have, because there's plenty of them.
So everyone talks about this Green Bay Packers model. Now, Jordan Love was 21 when they selected him, and it ended up working, moving on from Rodgers, and it looks like it's working with what Love was able to do. But I talked to Arthur Blank at the Super Bowl, and he told me on the air, he goes, that's the ideal way to do it. You get an interim guy, and then you eventually find the long-term guy. When you hear people say, oh, the Falcons are just basically taking a play out of the Packers playbook, what's your response to that?
Ridiculous. Not even close. Packers were winning double-digit games, going to the postseason. They had some nice pieces. I think they regret doing that anyway with Love. That was when Rodgers started bitching about not having receiving weapons and weapons on offense, and you'll get a quarterback just going to sit on the sideline. So I don't think that's a real thing. If you're going to do that, why not do it when Matt Ryan, who's the ultimate pro, is sitting on your team, and you got the 4th overall pick and Justin Fields staring you in the face? If you're going to do it then. Don't do it now when he spent $100 million guaranteed and $180 over 4 years with Kirk Cousins and pick. And now you got an 8th overall pick that could have been any one of those guys we were talking about earlier, defensive ends, cornerbacks, the receiver that's a stud out of Washington, and now we got number 8 pick to sit on the sidelines.
So you look at this offseason, right? They tried to get Belichick, and then I guess they were talked out of it. That's kind of the way that I understand it. You know, you bring in Kirk Cousins, there was some excitement. Now it seems like a cluster with Michael Penix Jr. Where's kind of your confidence moving forward with this football team after the last few months has played out?
It's tough. I was excited about the Bill Belichick coming in here. I know it's kind of against the grain and different, but the dude is probably one of the 2 or 3 best head coaches in the history of the NFL. He was going to change the culture of the franchise, which I think needed a new direction. Now, listen, Raheem Morris can do that. The new head coach of the Falcons could absolutely pull that off himself, but it's a different vibe with Raheem. With Bill, you knew it was no nonsense. You were going to have a plan, and I'm not sure what the Falcons' plan is right now. That's the biggest thing. I think for the fan base and the guys trying to figure out what's going on, I don't know what the plan is. I mean, are we trying to win now with Kirk? Because if we are, you should have used that number 8 pick and every other pick to help your team win today and tomorrow and in September. And it just doesn't feel that way right now. So frustration, a little bewilderment and baffled and confused more than anything right now.
Do you think Arthur Blank was out of the loop last night? Because we all saw that video of him and Terry Fontenot, but then I give you the comment that he said to me on my show as well. Like, you're the owner of the football team. He's hands-on. Like, he had to know that was going to be the pick. Like, it didn't just happen a few hours before the draft where they told him that's what they were going to do, right?
I don't know. I don't know. Part of me wishes I was in there to watch it like a fly on the wall, and the other part wishes I wasn't because I would be too close to the situation and I wouldn't be able to vent like I do with you and on my show down in Atlanta. So I think he has to be aware of what's happening. Why didn't they call Kirk Cousins before if they knew this was what was going to happen? I call him during the 10-minute window they have to make the pick. So
maybe afraid it was going to leak out to try to prevent it from happening on his camp?
Yeah, sure. There's a bunch of reasons. I'm sure you're probably right, but Arthur's involved. Arthur knows what's going on. He's 81 years old, and that's the other kind of puzzling thing. That guy wants to win tomorrow, and now we have to maybe wait a little bit longer.
He's Brian Finneran. You know, I usually talk to you. It's a very upbeat conversation. I think you need some ice cream today on this Friday.
I was doing an interview earlier. I got a. What is it? It's like a welcome party going on tonight for a wedding I'm going out to tomorrow. I got to
rehearsal dinner.
Control myself. Yeah, rehearsal dinner deal. I'm worried I'm going to drink my sorrows away at this thing, so I got to be careful and pace myself.
You know what? I have done that before. I think you munch here. Maybe you go a little like cobbler with some ice cream, and you just go for the sweets.
I like it. I can pull that off.
You know, you roll something up, and then you just munch. That's what I would say, Brian Finneran.
All right, brother. I'll see if I can make it happen.
You got it. There he is, Brian Finneran joining us. Does a great job, 680 The Fan, former Falcons wide receiver. That was depressing. That was really depressing. He's livid. And he's right, because they're trying to get the best of both worlds. They're trying to win now, but they're not ready to win now. And they made a move to secure the future. Man, I'm sitting there, I'm listening to him. I thought he was going to cry during that. Take a time out. This is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll do a news brief next. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
Well, the NFL draft continues tonight with the second and third rounds. The Bills lead things off with the 33rd pick overall. And the NFL has had record ratings and fan interest and could have more. Commissioner Roger Goodell said on the Pat McAfee show earlier today he's looking at an 18-game season down the road, and that would move the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. With the draft in downtown last night and close to 300,000 people in attendance, the Tigers played this afternoon and were routed by the Royals 8-0, with 7 of those 8 runs coming in the 9th inning. 2 of them coming in after batters were hit by a pitch. Seth Lugo went 7 innings for the win. His 4th, he gave up just 3 hits on the day. 3 games in the NBA playoffs tonight. 2 of the series are even at 1, and then the Timberwolves are up 2-0 on the Suns. The series moves to Phoenix for Game 3. Chris Finch hoping his team can get past the first round this year. The Wolves coach said his group has brought the right attitude.
You could tell when you're looking at a game plan as it comes to fruition on the floor, whether your guys are ready to play or not. Of course, it's the playoffs, they're going to be ready to play, but at what level are they focused? And that's been very high.
Kansas big man Hunter Dickinson is returning to school for another season. I'm Rich Jackham.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
Wendy's new Cinnabon Pull Apart is here to satisfy your sweet morning cravings. Maybe Brian Finner could use one of those. Get your day off to a sweet start with a Cinnabon Pull Apart. Only at participating U.S. Wendy's. This weekend's race is at Dover for the Worth 400. Kyle Larson will look to increase his lead over Martin Truex Jr. at the top of the point standing. Larson has 1 career win and 7 top 5s at Dover. All righty, news brief time. Let's get to it. So Kyle Pitts was on Bleacher Report Live. We had Mike Renner on, who was on that earlier. He was hosting along with Adam Lefkoe, and you had Micah Parsons and C.J. Stroud in studio for the entirety of the first round. And this was Kyle Pitts' instant reaction when the pick was in that the Falcons are going with Michael Penix Jr.
Kyle, I have something for you, my man. The pick is in. And with the 8th pick in the draft, the Atlanta Falcons are taking quarterback Michael Penix out of Washington.
Wow. That's surprising. Wow.
That's a slinger right there, man. I think this is great for him to learn from such a professional like Kirk. It's great to see him, and I can't wait to get him in the building. This is a good one. I like this one.
Yeah, are you shocked? Are you as shocked as I am?
I'm very shocked. I'm not going to lie. Like you said, I did think we were going defense. I'm not going to lie. But that definitely kind of just changed up the dynamic.
I give credit to Kyle Pitts because that's a tough spot. You're reacting live to the pick. You think it's probably a layup. Okay, they go wide receiver or they go defense. And then it's like, holy crap, I got to say the right thing here. And then when Lefkoe goes, you got to be surprised. Like, yeah, of course I'm surprised. It's a good job there by Kyle Pitts. Here's Tom Pelissero, the NFL Network reporter. He was on Good Morning Football on the Falcons picking Michael Penix Jr. at 8.
I've seen the comparisons to Green Bay and taking Jordan Love. This was a relationship that we already knew was probably not going to end well. With Kirk Cousins, this isn't a relationship that had gone south. This is cheating on your wife on the honeymoon. We just got there.
And the other thing, too, why I don't compare the Rodgers and Kirk Cousins thing, Rodgers was already there. He was established, like Tom Pelissero said. And Aaron Rodgers is a great quarterback. Kirk Cousins just good. He's very good. So there's no attachment from the fan base. And also, Jordan Love is 21 when they drafted him. Now, Michael Penix Jr. turns 24 in a few weeks. Crazy. And that's the crazy part. I like Michael Penix Jr. I would have loved if Michael Penix Jr. was the pick if they didn't have Kirk Cousins. Nick Saban, I thought he was really good last night on TV. Here he was with Scott Van Pelt on ESPN talking about Jaden Daniels.
The one thing that he does well that people don't maybe give him enough credit for, he has improved dramatically as a passer in the last 2 years and probably since he was at Arizona State. So this guy can throw the deep ball. And if there's anything he probably needs to do a little better, the game's going to speed up on him a little bit. He's going to have to get the ball out a little quicker, maybe at times. But the thing I like about him is he steps up in the pocket. So many of these college quarterbacks drift. They drift into the rush. So they create more problems for themselves than really in helping themselves. So he steps up in the pocket, and if it's open, he's taken off. You're going to have to defend this guy like Lamar Jackson because he is fast. Now, the only thing about that is he's going to have to work on his size and strength a little bit so he has the durability to be able to play that way. But when this guy takes off, he can actually outrun angles on defense like nobody's business. So this guy is Randall Cunningham type of runner, but a really, really good passer. Don't underestimate this guy as a passer. He's accurate. He can throw the long ball. I think he's got a good feel for the passing game. He gets the ball in the right place at the right time.
For those draft shows to have Saban and Belichick on, you can't place a value on that. Just because of their comprehensive knowledge and two of the greatest coaches ever, that was just an awesome, minute plus that you just heard from Nick Saban, who had to go up against Jaden Daniels quite a few times in Alabama going up against LSU. Here is Gerard Mayo. Will Drake May start right away for the New England Patriots?
I don't think many rookies are ready to just jump in and play. And look, at the end of the day, our philosophy is the best players will play. And, coming in as a rookie, hopefully he's a sponge. There are a lot of good players in that locker room. And look, Jacoby, he understands. Like, he's a mentor. He's very smart, has great leadership skills, and hopefully Drake can learn something from him as well. But I would say, we're going to compete all spring. We're going to compete during training camp. And the best player will start. We're not sitting here saying that Drake is our starting quarterback. I think he understands that.
I don't think Drake May is starting week one. I got to see what they do in the next 24 hours. They go get Debo or Ayuk. That could expedite the timeline. They're just taking a wide receiver, 34th overall. I would say that bare minimum the first 8 weeks of the season, you're seeing Drake May on the bench. But that's like the conflicting things you've heard recently. It's Drake May's not NFL ready. Then you hear some people say, that's a little bit of an overhyped narrative. He's actually closer than what you think. Let's go to Tom Curran. He reveals on NBC Sports Boston that the Patriots actually inquired about trading for Justin Herbert.
J.J. McCarthy has been talked up by Jim Harbaugh ceaselessly throughout this draft process. The Patriots, I have on good authority, said, you know what? Why don't you just call the Chargers and see if they'll trade straight up? We'll take Justin Herbert. You guys can have J.J. McCarthy. And the Chargers said, no, we're not going to do that. But that does indicate that the Patriots are more than willing to go out and spend the dough. Of course it's interesting.
That's a really good nugget.
No, it's smart. You hear that Minnesota called. You hear that the Patriots called the Chargers because Jim Harbaugh is sitting there being the biggest advocate for J.J. McCarthy, but they were never trading Justin Herbert because of the contract they just gave him. And also, Justin Herbert's a pretty damn good quarterback. Here is Jim Harbaugh speaking about the devil himself on drafting Joe Alt at 5. And Joe Alt revealed to us the other day that he didn't even have a top 30 visit with the Chargers. And Stu texted me right away. He goes, so much for what Joe Alt had to say. But here's Harbaugh on drafting Alt at number 5.
You're going to say, what about a weapon? What about offensive linemen? We look at as weapons. That group, when we talk about attacking, and we talk about attacking on offense, offensive line is the tip of the spear.
And that's how you build your football team. You build your football team with a great offensive line. You got Slater there. Now you have Joe Alt there. I like the kid from BC from a few years ago on the interior part of that offensive line. They're starting to build their football team in the trenches. And yes, you'll eventually go replace and get some skill position players. With Keenan Allen no longer there. Mike Williams no longer there as well. Let's go to Micah Parsons. Last year, remember him being on the air with Adam Lefko and not being happy that the Eagles got Jalen Carter. Now he's upset that the Eagles got Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. Here is Micah Parsons on Bleacher Report Live as the Eagles made their selection.
I'm honestly utterly disgusted on how lucky the Eagles are. It's just like Chris, I do not know how he fell that far with this run of offensive tackles and quarterbacks. That's the only thing that makes sense. I thought he was a top 15, top 12 talent, and he just fell right into their laps.
And he was your favorite player?
He was definitely one of my more favorite players in this draft. Like I said, he rose in every bar. He checked every box. I mean, I think this is a terrific pick, man. I don't know how Howie and them get so lucky. That's how I'm going to put it.
Sounds like every time Micah Parsons speaks, he wants to be on the Philadelphia Eagles. Here is Brian Thomas Jr.'s mother, Sandra Thomas. A very funny encounter with Laura Rutledge on ABC.
Sandra, how far has this family come?
We came from Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
When you think about the journey that you've been on together, what does tonight mean to you?
It means the world. It's amazing. I'm so grateful to God, so happy for him. We are so proud of him.
That's how far has the family come? Yeah, we drove from Baton Rouge. Let's hear from the father, Brian Thomas Sr. I don't get why they asked him to do this. They asked him to do a little Duval chant. Here's, once again, Laura Rutledge.
You guys want to put out a Duval? You know, that's what they say in Jacksonville, like a really loud Duval. What is that? Oh, we're going to have to work on that. So we're going to commercial break, and we'll practice about Duval. More NFL draft is on the way. It's like Duval.
So weird. I like Laura Rutledge, but that's weird. Hey, we had Brian Thomas on the other day. I'd rather have talked to his parents, if I'm being honest. And finally, here's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. The Vikings wanted Malik Neighbors?
At number 5, the Chargers, when they took Joe Alt, they passed on an opportunity to trade out of that spot. The team that wanted to move up to that spot, I'm told, the Minnesota Vikings. And not to take J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings, I'm told, were trying to move up to number 5 to get Malik Neighbors. What does that tell you about the Vikings and Justin Jefferson?
Wow. Now, if they don't pay Justin Jefferson, there's dumb, and then there's really dumb. Like, you got to pay Justin Jefferson. That plan can't be, let's go trade up for Malik Neighbors. You pair him with Addison, especially when you have a quarterback to sell on a rookie deal. And then, you eventually trade Justin Jefferson. That wouldn't make any sense. I know they wouldn't have got the quarterback if they drafted Malik Neighbors. I don't know about that one.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond. He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
We continue to react to the craziest first round of the NFL draft that I've ever seen. 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. A defensive player doesn't go until 15. Just absolute mayhem. You think you know where a franchise is going. They have Kirk Cousins for 4 years. Now Kirk Cousins is on the clock because Michael Penix Jr. did go to the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. And after Michael Penix did go, it said a domino effect. All right, Vikings, we know they had to land J.J. McCarthy. They did that. Some people were surprised by Bo Nix going to the Denver Broncos. Just absolute mayhem. You had defensive players who we thought were going to go in the top 10 fall out of the top 10, with Dallas Turner being one of them. Just absolute mayhem last night at Detroit. And now joining us, one of the best NFL reporters in the business. He, of course, is my friend James Palmer, who always does a sensational job whenever he joins us right here on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. James, appreciate it. How you been, my man?
I'm good, man. Last night was awesome. I'm not going to lie. I had an awesome time. Everybody knows I had an awesome time. It was great, Zach.
Let me start you off with the Falcons did. I like them signing Kirk Cousins. Now I don't, because it's not as if they drafted someone that was 21, 22 that you need to develop and isn't NFL ready. I kind of want to see Michael Penix Jr. now play with all the weapons that he has in Atlanta.
Yeah, and the way it was described to me, and I've kind of been all over this to kind of toot my own horn. I've known for a little while that was one of their picks, just because Dallas Turner was the play that everybody had in the mock drafts. You mentioned no defensive players in the top 10. They didn't like Dallas Turner at all, to my understanding. They didn't really have any defensive players in the top 10 on their board. Pretty similar to a lot of other teams. And when they looked at their board, it was, we really love Michael Penix. Some people in the building had him as the second best quarterback on their board. You could say maybe he was their third best after Caleb and Jaden Daniels. But after that workout that they had out in Washington, where they went out with a contingent with Terry Fontenot and everybody was there, I was told, Zach, it was like 40 degrees, winds whipping all over the place, and he goes outdoors throws the ball like he's working out in an indoor that's 80 degrees, and on the plane ride back, all of them are going, we might have a really difficult situation on our hands when we hit the clock at 8, because people were falling in love with Michael Penix. You mentioned the age, but I could also look at the age of Arthur Blank, and I believe there is that video going around that everybody's seeing Terry Fontenot looking like he's describing what they did with 8 to Arthur Blank. I think it's the exact opposite. I think Arthur had a big part in making this pick of Michael Penix because of what happened with Matt Ryan and his departure and them not having a plan. I believe he wants to have a chance for a Super Bowl for the duration of the time that he ends up owning this team. He is like 81 years old, to have a plan past Kirk Cousins. You mentioned wanting to see Michael Penix with all of these weapons. I kind of hinted at it. It was described to me that he's kind of a souped-up Kirk Cousins, kind of a supercharged version with a better arm, but a lot of the same traits, which makes them think the transition might be easy, but also might make for a difficult time during training camp when everybody sees Michael Penix out there slinging it next to Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles.
How long do you think Kirk Cousins will actually be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons?
Right now, it was put to me that he has an extremely expensive insurance policy. I don't know what that exactly means, but I know he's the starter right now. And I think we are all being a little bit naive, Zach, in all honesty. Like, just with him and with Aaron Rodgers and their age and coming off of this injury, that we all just assume they are going to be the players that we've seen before. Now, there's a very good chance they both can go out there and play. Running around is not a huge part of both of their games, in all honesty. I think A-Rod could go out there in a wheelchair and probably sling it all over the field with his arm talent. But it's nice to have another quarterback in your room. I think, Kirk Cousins is the quarterback for this season. I think the Falcons would like it that he's the quarterback for the 2 years that are guaranteed money, and then you transition. I don't think, in all honesty, Atlanta cares how old Michael Penix is going to be. We're all looking at that. We're probably all looking at that in terms of Michael Penix going, damn, when's my next contract, right? Like, how am I going to be when I'm trying to get my second deal as an 8th overall pick? But I think Atlanta's just looking at, let's see who's the most talented quarterback to play. We think that's Kirk right now, and it doesn't hurt to have Michael Penix sit.
So from what you said, they went to the workout, right? The private workout that they had. They fell in love with him. They were buzzing about him on the flight back. If Terry Fontenot could have a do-over, do you think he doesn't even sign Kirk Cousins? They just rock and roll with Michael Penix Jr. at 8 and start him week 1?
I don't think they mind their situation. I really don't think you would ask for a do-over, because then you're also asking, and they do believe that Michael Penix, processes extremely well, throws with anticipation, can layer the football, put it pretty much anywhere, a lot of traits, doesn't take sacks. A big part that they loved is over 1,800 dropbacks in his college career. He took 31 sacks. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I do think you're also, with the team that they've put together, you would be trotting out a rookie quarterback to try and go out and win the division, and they believe compete heavily in the NFC. I think they still think they're in a very good position. There weren't a whole lot of holes in this team. They didn't like Dallas Turner as an edge. Maybe they wanted to get an edge in the back end of the first round. They tried to get up for Latu. It came really close, and that would have been a perfect first round probably for Atlanta. And I wonder if they would have been able to get that pick. I wanted to get up. I think he ended up going 15th over to Indianapolis. Yeah. If they were able to get him, what do you think the perception of what Atlanta did in this draft would be? Do you think it would be different if they ended up going and getting an edge rusher in the back end of the first? I think it would be a little bit different.
So it's a great question. Now, I was on an island because I kept on saying that they were going to draft Rome Odunze at 8. Mm-hmm. Now, I know they needed defense, but I still think there would have been a lot of blowback just because it feels now the Kirk Cousins signing is irrelevant. Like, you didn't need to do it because, once again, you draft Michael Penix Jr. I think he's ready to go now. This isn't, a Drake May that you may need to sit the entirety of this isn't like people say the Packers model. Heck, Arthur Blank said it to me in February. He goes, sometimes you need to find an interim solution and then the long-term solution like what Green Bay did. But Jordan Love wasn't ready. He was 21. Penix is ready to go. So I think it would have weathered the storm a little bit, but there still would have been a lot of pushback.
Very much so. And I think you could always use the term we use in our personal lives, you can't help who you fall in love with. Because they didn't have anybody else up there that they really, really loved. Like you mentioned the receiver spot. They weren't in the receiver market. They weren't going to take a skill guy for the 4th year in a row in the top 10. The one that they did love was Malik Neighbors. That was the one that they actually really, really liked in terms of the receiver group. I don't think anybody dislikes Marvin Harrison Jr. Go Bucks. But in all honesty, they did like Malik Neighbors. They're in their meetings. They're going, I think we're going to have to make this move because this is the guy on our board that is up there. And if Arthur Blank, and this is in every building, Zach, if the owner has a major say, that's going to push the dominoes in that direction. And to my understanding, Arthur had a big say in that Michael Penix be the pick at 8.
Yeah, I know I saw the video last night, and you have all these aggregators, and I'm not crapping on aggregators because, hey, we love when they
It's like
they pump
Seinfeld,
out.
everybody trying to determine what they're saying, like Kramer's out there, we're going to sweep together. Yeah.
But there's no way that Arthur Blank, this is not draft day, where he found out, as the pick was being made, what the pick was actually going to be. I don't believe that for a second. All right, I know that you live in Denver. I know you heard some rumblings of how much Sean Payton was falling in love with Bo Nix. I would have never thought he would have been the 12th overall pick, but once you have Michael Penix go at 8, and then the Vikings say, okay, now we need to go get J.J. McCarthy, I could see why Bo Nix was the pick at 12. Do you like that move for Denver?
First, I don't think, Zach, whatever happened in front of them would have altered them picking Bo Nix 12.
Wow.
No matter how many quarterbacks were off the board, I think they would have stuck with Nix. They didn't like McCarthy. My understanding, that was a lot of smoke out there. They weren't huge fans of J.J. McCarthy. They weren't super high on Michael Penix. I would think a lot of Penix's traits, like the sack numbers that I mentioned there, would fit Sean Payton. But Bo Nix was their guy. And this is a fascinating one because you mentioned, I live in Denver. The text started coming in from war rooms. I can't believe they took Bo Nix at 12. That kept coming into my phone. But there's the other school of thought going, the quarterback position. If he's the guy you really, really want, it doesn't matter where you pick him. It's an outlier from the rest of the positions. And I do believe that when you always equate value and where you're getting the value, the positional value, all these different things that come into play. But the quarterback spot, don't get cute. You could have maybe traded back, got some more picks because they didn't have a second-round pick, which was complicating this even further. But you don't do that and then have the opportunity that maybe the Rams like him and maybe, New Orleans was interested in looking around at the quarterbacks and, maybe they end up snaking him or Seattle, some of the teams that were also quietly looking at quarterbacks. This was the guy that Sean Payton really, really wanted. This is a guy that some people around the league believe is going to be a backup quarterback. That was his grade, middle of the second round, third round, and he goes 12th overall. But there are some things that some people around the league really, really like. Like the comp that I heard, Zach, from multiple offensive coordinators actually was Derek Carr, but a more athletic Derek Carr that probably handles pressure in the pocket much better than Carr has in his career. But there's a lot of similarities there in some offensive minds in terms of mechanics, footwork, ability to get the football loose. I just think, and this was maybe the best way it was described to me, you put Bo Nix in the situation J.J. McCarthy's in right now in Minnesota, I think you see a vastly different Bo Nix than the one you're going to see this year. And that's just saying both of those guys probably play very well in McCarthy and Nix with a lot of talent around them. And I think it's a similar thing you could say with maybe like Brock Purdy. It was told to me that you put Bo Nix on the Eagles, on the Niners, maybe the Cowboys, and you're like, this guy's out here slinging it. It's a really good situation. Situation matters, and I think situation matters with the head coach he landed with, which is a big part of this as well. But there's going to be some growing pains because the Broncos roster is just nowhere near where that situation he would be in if, say, he landed in Minnesota.
And that's my problem with it, especially in their division, where you can't just have a good quarterback. You got to have a great quarterback with who you're going up against and the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes. I don't think this guy, Bo Nix, has a ceiling of being a great quarterback. I think his ceiling's just good, and you just said it. I think he's going to play in year one. I think he should be the day one starter. They don't have really any other quarterback on that roster that moves the needle for me. But the weapons that he's throwing to right now, geez, they stink.
Yeah, that's the issue. I do think he has a better offensive line than maybe some guys that are taken near that portion of the draft. As a quarterback, I don't think the Broncos line is terrible. In some metrics, however you want to go analytics, they're kind of a top 10 line in some people's minds. His center right now was his center from college. He has some help up front, but the weapons he has, there's an athletic tight end in Greg Dulcich that they thought was going to be a playmaker for them. He's going to run that joker role for Sean Payton when he came in. Every year he's been in the league, he's been unable to stay on the field. I think Cortland Sutton had some flashes, right? 10 touchdowns, I think it was. Marvin Mims is going to be the guy sliding into the other spot. Tim Patrick hasn't played in 2 years, coming off of season-end injuries. It's not that group that, as I mentioned the Derek Carr comp, when teams were talking to me about Bo Nix, it was, remember when Derek Carr had weapons, you kind of were like, he could be dangerous at times, right? He can light it up a little bit. Bo Nix doesn't have those weapons right now, and I think you're right when you mention his ceiling's probably middle of the road. That's kind of what Derek Carr's been his whole career, right? It's like a 15th best quarterback, somewhere around that range. That seems what we all envisioned for Bo Nix, but this is kind of a legacy pick for Sean Payton. I really think it is, because he has made the comments publicly last night where you don't move back for the guy you really fall in love with. You know, he mentioned Patrick Mahomes in the same sentence. He's not comparing their skill set. He's just saying you go get the guy you love, and the last guy you fell in love with was Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot on Bo Nix's shoulders right now. This is a team that's been struggling with quarterback play since Peyton Manning retired after the 2015 season.
I think the biggest winner from a team standpoint last night, James Palmer, and I know it's easy when you have the number 1 overall pick, but they also had the 9th pick, it's the Bears. You get Caleb Williams and you get Rome Odunze, but the individual player that I thought was the biggest winner, it's J.J. McCarthy. If he would have landed in New England or the Giants, I thought it would have been miserable. He goes to Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones in that backfield. Now you have Hawkinson and O'Connell as the coach. I think J.J. McCarthy can be good with the Minnesota Vikings right away.
It's one of the better quarterback situations, Zach, we've seen somebody walk into as a top 10 pick. I mean, I can't think of somebody going into that type of situation. I've had conversations with Justin Jefferson last season just about the mind of Kevin O'Connell and about the way other quarterbacks, remember, that stepped in. Josh Dobbs comes in and Kevin's just like telling him plays while he's in the huddle and they're out there winning football games. Like, to have that type of coach, that type of play caller, the ability to interchange these talented pieces with the line that's in front of him, like, this is a very, very good situation because a lot is not going to be put on J.J. McCarthy. And I think that's when we saw him thrive in Michigan, as much as it pains me to say that as a Buckeye. When he thrived in Michigan is when he didn't have to be a hero. He didn't have to go out there and do it. He just had to run everything. And he's done a lot of pro-type things out of that offense in Michigan. So he's ready in some senses more than some of these other guys in terms of operating a huddle, puts him a little, head and shoulders up than some of these other guys just getting the process going. But I think KO calling everything for him and the group he has around him, this is just a phenomenal situation for him. The other team that I would say, real quick, you mentioned the Bears and their 2 picks. I think Arizona did very well.
Yeah, I agree.
In this first round as well.
Got the best player in the draft, and then you go get Robinson, the edge rusher out of Missouri. That's a team that needs talent, and I think a lot of people forget that Kyler Murray, I don't know if he'll be great, but he showed he could be good before. You have a quarterback that you paid and you could do something with. Now you got to go get some players around him, and they did that.
Yeah, this is the best line that I heard yesterday morning. I had an assistant GM text me. I was like, we were just talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., and he was like, I watched some games, and I was oohing and ahhing, and then I saw his measurables, and I was like, holy moly, like 220 he's doing this? Are you out of your mind? And I was like, what do you think? He's like, I'm going to tell you this right now. When he walks across the stage tonight, they shouldn't hand him a hat. They should hand him a bleeping gold jacket. And I was like, that is a line right there. That is a line to describe a player that has not yet played an NFL down. But he went about the process very differently. And I will say this about Marvin. That didn't bother a single team I talked to. Him preparing for rookie camp, not doing a lot of things, didn't do a pro day. They're going to see other players that are as clean a prospects as we had with Marvin Harrison Jr. do this as well. And my understanding is if you are that caliber of player and there's no questions about your character, your work ethic, or your game, the league is not going to have any problems with guys handling things the way Marvin did, especially if he goes out and wins, say, Rookie of the Year and balls out. And they're like, okay, I want my guy ready for camp.
What about the Giants? Like, what do I make of the Daniel Jones situation? Okay, they paid him. He's going to be the guy next year. They didn't draft a quarterback. Maybe they take like a Spencer Rattler tonight. I've seen that's the rumor. You go get Malik Neighbors. That's a big-time talent. But what is the future of Daniel Jones with the Giants?
They really seem to only be interested in Drake May. I was told the J.J. McCarthy stuff with them was like a little bit of a smokescreen. And I'm going to say this. I know, Brian, a little bit. If they've all thought, let's go and visit with J.J. McCarthy on Easter to make everybody think that's how in love we are with J.J. McCarthy. That is like a tremendous, elaborate draft process ruse. I heard they're really only interested in May, and that, kind of actually played into the part of New England going, Brian Daboll evaluates quarterbacks pretty well. He likes May. I think this makes us feel a little bit comfortable. So they don't get the one guy that they really, really want. They stick with Daniel Jones. You give him an added target. I mean, they've been lacking a threat of a receiver for some time. What I do think helps Daniel Jones and helps this entire team as a whole, Zach, explosive plays just weren't happening in the NFL last year. Like they just don't, unless you're the Miami Dolphins, I guess. They just aren't happening. The way defenses play, this Vic Fangio shell system, just take away everything deep. Malik Neighbors can create different explosive plays from anywhere on the field. And I think that is, that's something that, Kansas City went and did with Worthy, but Neighbors even better at it from more spots. I think that's extremely important when you're a team in the position like the Giants are with a quarterback like you are with Daniel Jones. If you can sneak a couple of scores out that you probably wouldn't have gotten, where he's going to outrun any safety no matter the angle, and he's going to be able to get you some big scores in moments where drives just end in a lot quicker fashion than you would have thought, I think that helps out Daniel Jones tremendously. But they looked at quarterbacks and, they liked May, and he was gone. So that was essentially it for them.
Whether it happens tonight or maybe at some point this offseason, will Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel both be on the 49ers come week 1?
They have the luxury to do it. I just don't see it. And I see the problem is we're doing this now, right? And then the second round's going to start and something's going to happen and I'm going to be wrong. But my guess right now, as we stand here, there's a greater chance Ayuk is on the team than there is Deebo Samuel.
And I think Ayuk is the better wide receiver, but Deebo is the better all-around player. Outside of New England, because that's what the team everyone's talking about. And I think New England, they have to go get an established player. They tried with Calvin Ridley. I guess his girlfriend didn't want to go to Foxborough. Who were some other teams? I've been to Foxborough multiple times. I love it. I've seen a lot of championships there. You go to the Red Robin before the game. There's a good steakhouse after the game.
Over there to Davio's?
Yeah, Davio's, of course.
365 days out of the year Christmas store? Yeah, let's go, Foxborough.
Little movie theater. There's a hospital there if you got to go to one. There's a hotel. There's enough stuff there.
There is.
Me being a Patriot homer, I will sell Foxborough. I've
spent way too much time in Foxborough, especially during Deflategate.
Yeah. A bunch of bull junk with that commissioner. But anyway, outside of the Patriots, who else could be in play for a Deebo or an Ayuk trade?
I heard a rumbling about Deebo and maybe Buffalo would be interested because obviously they kept moving back. We always knew at 28 they were going to be looking at receiver, and then they go back, and then they go back again. And first they go back, and everybody in the AFC is just absolutely pissed off at them for going back and letting the Chiefs come up and take Worthy, which the rest of the AFC is now miserable that Patrick Mahomes has in. So they go back again into the second round. There's some talk. Maybe Deebo goes there, but I don't think that fits at all because they can work the middle of the field. They have talent that can do everything kind of in the middle with what you saw from Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. They have like 3 other slots. They need an outside guy. Like they need Ayuk actually on the outside. I would assume they're going to go with the draft pick. The interesting part about where they could land is there's still a lot of wide receiver talent on the board. Like what I was told was the guess was 14 to 15 wide receivers in the first 2 rounds. What do we have in the first round? Was it 7? Is that what we had?
I think so, yeah.
I think so, like half of it. So there's still definitely players to go out there and get on these cheap contracts. I mean, that's a huge part. And I think the difficult part about it is what 2 contracts just got done in the last couple of days and drove the market up even further at the position.
Good point.
So that's why I do think that makes Deebo more attractive than Ayuk because you're going to have to do a new deal. Deebo has till, I think, 26 on his contract. So you can get him and not have to rework something right away, like Ayuk, which you would probably have to. And the deals that just got done, I think, complicates that. And the other part is there's not a whole lot of teams that love to trade players during the draft. I mean, there's teams that do it. Howie Roseman will do it every year. But there's some teams that just won't do it because of everything that goes involved with having to get this done while you're still trying to handle the draft.
Last thing I'll ask you, James Palmer. Outside of the obvious ones, take the quarterbacks, take the star wide receivers out of it. What was your biggest takeaway from the first round?
I thought everything kind of fell the way I thought it would fall with the number of tackles. Because I talked to a lot of teams in the back end of the draft, and again, they were trying to figure out the top 15 because 15 is really kind of, I would say, the average first round grades that were out there around the league. So then mostly the back half is picking second round guys. I was wondering if there was going to be some movement for tackles, but that didn't really happen. I thought one of the most interesting parts of the first round was Howie Roseman made a boatload of calls. They liked Quinyon Mitchell. They thought he was the best corner in the draft. And they were able just to sit there and stay and get their pick of the best corner in the draft in their mind. I thought that was one of the more fascinating spots where it just kept falling that way, where they were just going, I guess we don't have to make a trade for
and
this guy.
Sirianni knows everything about the kid because his college roommate was Jason Candle, the coach at Toledo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so some people had Wiggins as maybe the most talented corner in the draft, and maybe some people in Philly's building had that. But in terms of the best prospect, the best player, it's Mitchell, and they've desperately needed it. And to me, that also is a little bit telling the way things have shifted in Philly just a tiny bit, because you and I both know how he wants to go the trenches like crazy. And a lot of people thought he was maybe moving up to add a tackle that could potentially play guard right now and then kick out when Lane Johnson retires. He wants to go trenches all the time in the first round. Hasn't picked a first-round corner since like Lito Shepherd, I think. And so I think this changes, like Vic Fangio and that group on defense has a little bit of a say in the room about what they need to change and from how bad they were as a secondary last year.
He's the great James Palmer. James, thank you so much. Appreciate the time today.
No problem, buddy. Good to see you.
There he is, James Palmer joining us. What a comprehensive breakdown that was. And he's exactly right when you look at the wide receivers. You had Marvin Harrison Jr., you had Malik Neighbors, and you had Roma Dunziogo in the top 10. We knew that was going to happen. And then after that, you had Brian Thomas Jr. be the next wide receiver off the board, which puts even more pressure on Trevor Lawrence. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs. And then in the last two picks, you had the Parasol kid from Florida, and then Leggett out of South Carolina, who I like him a lot. And I like that story, too. Carolina base told them they were going to pick him. Then they revealed it. Then Canales said, oh, no, I told that to like 50 guys. And they ended up trading up one pick to end up getting him. Coming on back, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Infinity Sports Network.
It is the Infinity Sports Network, and it is the Zach Gelb Show. Day 2 of the NFL Draft after the mayhem that did occur on Thursday night in round 1, and I've never seen anything like it. Like, if you would have told me Bo Nix would have been the pick for the Broncos at 12 a week and a half ago, I would have said, what crack are you smoking? I seriously would have said that. If you would have told me Michael Penix Jr. would have been the pick at 8 a week ago to the Falcons, I would have said kind of what Darvin Ham said when people were saying, oh, the Lakers should have lost the first playing game. Like, what insane asylum did you just come out of? Well, maybe those people were actually right with the way that the Lakers are looking up against the Nuggets. But to be fair, Stu, you still weren't right. Even though you were right about that the Lakers would have got their ass kicked by Denver. They keep on ripping your heart out, building up these leads, and then choking them away. I didn't believe that the Lakers were in a spot where they could pick or choose how they get into the postseason. You just had to find a way to get in. But the Penix and Nix selections define the first round. Because the Falcons part, it's like, why'd you bring in Kirk Cousins to draft a guy that's ready to play right now? And the Denver selection of Bo Nix, I respect. Okay, Sean, you fell in love with Bo Nix, and you don't let a player, especially at that position, and only at that position, quarterback, you don't let a player go further down the draft board, and you trade back, and then you lose out at him, and then he goes on to be great, and you're saying, what if? But I don't believe Bo Nix has a ceiling of being great. And that Broncos offensive roster, line, like James Palmer said, better than what you think. But that receiving core and the weapons are non-existent in Denver. And Stu, I just wonder what your thoughts were. And this is just what James Palmer was told. He was like, people compare Bo Nix to Derek Carr. I don't know about you. When he was saying that, that was even more of the going off in my head. This is why you don't take Bo Nix. Because anytime Derek Carr was on the cusp of becoming a top 10 quarterback, and he's about to tiptoe into that conversation, he took 3 or 4 steps back. It was like a roller coaster ride where there's some ups, there's some downs, there's some thrills, there's some misery. But then, like, you got off it, you're like, okay. I know there's better roller coaster rides out there. It gave me a little thrill. There was a lot of misery during it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of better options and more entertaining things to do.
Yeah, and Derek Carr was the second-round pick, so, like...
Not 12th.
Not 12th overall, so I think there's a difference there. Like, I think the Raiders got good value out of Carr. If the Broncos have what is Derek Carr with Bo Nix, they'll probably be disappointed in the end, I would think.
But put it this way. There are some people now that believe Justin Herbert is overrated. I'm not one of them. But there are some people that believe Justin Herbert is overrated. He'll never be a great quarterback, and he's never going to be able to put it all together with the Chargers. If I ask those people that say Justin Herbert's overrated, and a lot of them are Denver Broncos fans. There's one in this office that I know of, cough, cough, Anthony Gallo. Would you rather have Bo Nix or Justin Herbert? They're lying if they don't say Justin Herbert. And that's the big problem. Like in the NFC, you don't have a lot of elite quarterbacks. I don't know if there's any elite quarterbacks in the NFC right now. Jalen Hurts looked like he was elite, then took a step back. Dak Prescott, definitely not elite. Brock Purdy, not elite. Kirk Cousins, not elite. Kyler Murray, not elite. Matthew Stafford, very, very good. At times great, but I wouldn't say he's elite. So the NFC is there for the taking. That's why I really hope the Bears put it together. You have Caleb Williams, who could be elite. But in the NFC, you could get away with like a good quarterback to get you to a Super Bowl. But in the AFC, particularly the AFC West, you need a top 3 quarterback. Like, look at Buffalo. They have Josh Allen. He's considered an elite quarterback. He's considered a great quarterback. They can't even get over the hump against Kansas City. Joe Burrow's the one guy that's been able to do it up against Kansas City. Won one year, lost the next year in the championship game. C.J. Stroud is someone that I think will be elite. But for Bo Nix, I don't think he's ever going to be elite. And that's my biggest concern here is you have the AFC West. Everyone's chasing Kansas City. I hope a second team emerges. And I like what the Raiders have on offense outside of the quarterback position. Stu, your team did a good job getting Brock Bowers. You have Michael Mayer. You take a look. You have Devontae Adams for now. You have Jacoby Myers. And I wish they still had Josh Jacobs, but you have offensive weapons. You go get a quarterback. That team, I'm not going to say they're going to go contend for the division title, but they could be the second best team in the AFC West. I don't think the Broncos are anywhere close. You look at the Chargers, I believe in their coach. I believe in their quarterback. Their offensive line shaping up well, but they have a lot of work to do. You have an aging defense. A lot of those guys are banged up. You got to get weapons on the offensive side of the ball. So let me just ask you this. I'll go around the room here. What was more surprising, and why was it more surprising to you? Michael Penix at 8 or Bo Nix at 12? Because a week ago, if I would have told you those would be the picks at 8 or 12, no one would have believed it. Stu, what's your response here?
Oh, I don't know if it's Penix at 8 necessarily, but Penix to the Falcons at 8, It was more surprising. But if you take the team out of it and it's just the number, then it's Nix. Because I thought Nix would be like a very late first rounder, early second rounder. I thought he'd be the guy that would kind of fall back, and I thought Penix would be a first round pick, maybe mid first.
I like the way that you said that because you're right. Like Penix at 8, just at 8, you could sell me on that before the draft. Him at 8 to the Falcons would have never ever believed it when you just guaranteed someone $100 million. But Bo Nix at 12, to me, like at 12, I would have, we were saying maybe the back end of the first round. Maybe. So I when I put out this poll question, because it was like one after another, it was bang, bang, and you can find it at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb. What's the bigger surprise? Michael Penix at 8 or Bo Nix at 12? It's because of Penix going to the Falcons. I think that's what's going to win this poll going away in a landslide. Samter, where you at on that question? What's more surprising, Penix at 8 or Bo Nix at 12?
Yeah, Penix at 8.
And Ack, what are you going on this one?
I go Penix at 8 more because it was confusing and mysterious and out of left field. There's so much more to unpack there than Bo Nix. But Bo Nix is almost equally as surprising.
And we knew that the Broncos needed a quarterback.
Yes.
We thought it would maybe be a trade up for Drake May. We maybe thought it was going to be J.J. McCarthy. And then you heard in like 48 hours, the last 48 hours, oh, maybe it's going to be Bo Nix. But you taking him at 12? Like, Stu, if we walked in here today and let's say Denver passed on him and your Raiders took him at 13 the next pick, would you have quit being a fan?
I would not quit being a fan, but I would be very, very annoyed. Probably more annoyed than any pick they've had. And that's saying a lot because
they've had Darius Hayward-Bay?
More than Darius Hayward-Bay, because that's like you're taking a quarterback that I just really don't believe in, that you're drafting too high. And I just really think isn't going to be good. Like, I think that's just a recipe for disaster.
And that's the thing, too. A lot of these quarterbacks now, we just went through the Trevor Lawrence draft. Okay, he's still in Jacksonville. All the other quarterbacks in the first round, Zach Wilson, new team. Mac Jones, new team. Justin Fields on a new team. You know, these teams give up. Trey Lance didn't even make it. Barely started with the Niners. A lot of these guys, they give up early. You know, Williams, I'll be surprised if the Bears are back there a few years from now. I believe as long as Jaden Daniels stays healthy, he's going to be really damn good. The Patriots just went quarterback to quarterback. I'm going to say that they get enough to make Drake May serviceable. Michael Penix Jr., I believe in him. I like his situation. When is he going to get on the field, though? But Bo Nix, like out of all these quarterbacks, I'd be surprised if Bo Nix is getting a second contract from the Denver Broncos. So what's the bigger surprise, Penix at 8 or Bo Nix at 12? I think it's because Penix at 8 to the Falcons. That's what wins this one in a landslide, 79.4% to 20.6%. We'll come on back, a little onside, offside update time first. Here is the Ack Man, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, last night's draft was historic, unpredictable, and featured several surprises. The next 2 rounds will be held tonight in Detroit. The Bills start things off with the 33rd pick overall. The NFL recently moved to a 17-game schedule, and Commissioner Roger Goodell said today on the Pat McAfee Show that he's interested in adding an 18th game and knocking off one preseason game. It will also move the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. The NFL is also going to allow the padded Guardian caps on top of helmets in a regular season in an effort to cut down on concussions. There's more action in Detroit today because of the draft tonight. That meant the Tigers played this afternoon. They lost the Royals by a score of 8-0. Kansas City scoring 8 times in the top half of the ninth. Seth Lugo gets his 4th win after 7 scoreless innings in which he allowed just 3 hits and struck out 9. Former Michigan coach Juwan Howard is reportedly joining the Brooklyn Nets as an assistant, so he's now back in the NBA, where he was an assistant for the Heat for 6 years before heading to Ann Arbor. And Kansas big man Hunter Dickinson returning to school for his final year of eligibility. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on X. Our handle is INF Sports Network. That's INF Sports Network on X.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. 2 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God. We're back
All right, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day. Brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Lou in Rochester says, Zach, who do you think the Bills should take with the 33rd overall pick to kick off the second round tonight? You could submit a question by tweeting at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag AskThePros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. I think Adonai Mitchell out of Texas or Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. One of those two players should be the pick at 33. Without further ado, though, I'm not talking about Freddie Adu. Santa's got some questions for me. I'll get some answers for you, hopefully. Let's get to a little onside, offside. Stu, hit it.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's onsides, offsides with Zach Gelb.
All righty, what do we got cooking today, Samter?
All season long, the Cowboys have talked about being, quote, all in, and rumors swirled about the circus inside the Dallas organization. Yet, once again, there was a lot of bluster before the team made a boring, sound draft decision, trading back 5 spots and selecting offensive tackle Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. We remember they did the same thing. There was all the talk about Jared Jones meddling and wanting Johnny Manziel, and instead they got Hall of Famer Zach Martin, an offensive guard. So onside, offside. For all the criticism that Jerry Jones gets, he's actually very good in the NFL draft.
So I am actually offended with something you just said. You said they made a boring selection?
I mean, offensive lineman. It's not sexy. It's not big splash. It's not. No, it's not like Dallas Cowboys big splash.
People. You don't respect how the games
Well, I
are
definitely
won.
don't like big people. No, but I'm just saying, offensive linemen aren't sexy. Wide receivers are sexy. Quarterbacks are sexy. Linebacker, defensive ends are sexy. Cornerbacks are sexy. Offensive linemen aren't sexy, but the Cowboys, despite all of this big Dallas star, we're the Cowboys, blah, 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 they don't always go with the sexy pick. They oftentimes don't go with the sexy pick.
Can I give you their first-round picks since 2010? Des Bryant, Teron Smith, Morris Claiborne, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, Byron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, Taco Charlton, Leighton Vander Esch, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Tyler Smith, Mozzie Smith, and Tyler Guyton. For a big chunk, that's pretty damn good. There's like a few busts in there. And there's a few guys that had their careers just derailed by injuries, but the time they played, they were really damn good. So for all the criticism of Jerry Jones, he's actually very good at the draft. On sides. I'll say this about Jerry Jones. He constructs a good team more times than not. But it's not a great team. Good team, not a great team. But no, I'll stay on side with this question. Yeah, I like it.
Now, the Broncos made a surprise pick, taking Bo Nix 12th overall to compete with my boys Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham. Most had Nix as a late first-round pick.
Your boy. You're a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, I know. Most had Nix as a late first-round pick, even maybe a second-round grade, but Sean Payton wanted to get a signal caller. So onside, offside, you trust in Payton leading the Broncos back to contention.
Offside. I'm sorry.
Offside.
The Sean Payton luster has worn off. And Bo Nix with no receiving core or a below average receiving core when you reach for a quarterback, how does that usually work out? The player usually fails. All right, Mac Jones was pretty hyped coming out of college. Mac Jones never had a number one wide receiver. At least Bo Nix will get good coaching on the offensive side of the ball. And the Patriots just picked a quarterback last night at 3 to replace Mac Jones, who's now in Jacksonville backing up Trevor Lawrence. So I'm not a fan of the Bo Nix selection.
Now, after the Bills lost their top 2 receivers this offseason, we all thought they would take a wideout in the first round, maybe even trade up to get one. However, Brandon Beane went the opposite route, trading back twice with quality receivers like Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, and Xavier Leggett still on the board. Now, both Xaviers are off. McConkey's still there. Obviously, Adonai Mitchell is still there as well. Now, onside, offside, the Bills made a mistake not taking a receiver in the first round.
You know who's also there? Keon Coleman, who I like a lot out of Florida State. I think the sexy take last night and the big take last night and the easy take is, how do the Bills trade with the Chiefs? How do they do it? And don't get me wrong, I was saying that on my couch last night. And then, you trade back again. You see 2 wide receivers go. I understand the PTSD that you get with trading with the Chiefs. Fully understand that. But let's see who they pick tonight. Because if they get Keon Coleman, if they get Ladd McConkey, if they get Adonai Mitchell, I'm not slamming what they did because Kansas City was still going to get a wide receiver. Carolina was still going to get a wide receiver. So if you're still able to get your guy, I don't believe the Bills made a mistake. So the Bills made a mistake not taking a wide receiver in the first round. I'm going offside because they could get a damn good wide receiver with the first pick of the second round tonight.
Offside. Now, my former team, the Jets, moved back one spot, adding a 4th and 5th rounder in the process. Heck of a move. But instead of taking super tight end Brock Bowers 11th, that went to Stu's Raiders. They went more conservative, taking Penn State offensive tackle Olu Fashanu.
Say that name 10 times fast.
Olu Fashanu. Onside, offside. The Jets should have taken Bowers to pair with Rodgers.
I wanted them to draft Brock Bowers. I can't crush them, though, for taking a lineman at Penn State that only allowed 1 sack and played a whole lot. So the Jets should have taken Bowers to pair with Rodgers. It would have been sexy. But remember, Teron Smith, he has been in and out of the lineup a lot. Has not played a full season in a long time. So I can't crush them for taking an offensive lineman, doing something that Samter would say isn't sexy, even though the big fellas can be sexy. So the Jets should have taken Bowers to pair with Rodgers. I'll go offside.
Offside. Now, Zach, your favorite owner, David Tepper, is at it again after a local bar in Carolina posted a sign saying, quote,
what a bleep hole, by the way.
Let the GM and coach pick. Security camera footage shows Tepper walking into the bar, confronting the staff, and even removing one of the employees' Eagles hats. Now, the staff at the bar, however, said the confrontation was jovial and pleasant, and he was having fun removing the Eagles fans' hat. That's what the guys who were...
He's an insecure man.
Well, the guys who were at the bar who he was talking to said it was no big deal. He was having fun. He was just jabbing at us. It didn't seem very serious.
Yeah, because Tepper will take a wrecking ball to their restaurant if they don't say that.
When a billionaire comes in and makes some questions, it's kind of threatening. Even if it's in a fun, jovial way, it's still threatening when a guy like that who owns the team and is a billionaire comes in
and is an
there.
insecure man and
he's
likes to
talking
throw drinks at people.
Yeah, these are kids who work, they're bartenders, they're waiters, they're hostesses.
Well, I think the guy he was talking to was the owner. He looked a little bit older.
Well, no, the owner wasn't there. The guy whose idea was
that wasn't the owner with the hat that he took off?
No. I think the owner was the one who put the sign up, and the guy who...
Good on the owner.
Yeah, the guy whose hat he took off was not the owner. He said the guy who made the decision, the owner is not here right now. So either way, onside, offside, David Tepper is the worst owner, not just in the NFL, in all of sports.
Yeah, because his team's a bleep show, and Daniel Snyder isn't in the NFL anymore. On sides, and like the A's owner, no one just cares about him. I know he's a bad owner too.
Dolan is up there.
Yeah, but at least the Knicks are winning right now. The Rangers are winning right now. I call him David Tepper Dolan Jr., but I'd rather have Dolan be running my team than David Tepper right now. And who do you think he was? Like Tony Soprano walking over in that Italian restaurant telling the kid to take his hat off in the Italian establishment? Ripping the guy's hat off. Just what a creep David Tepper is. And David Tepper is the worst owner in sports on sides. And the sign was 100% right, by the way. 100% right. Let the GM and coach pick. Maybe you would have had CJ Stroud. All righty, that does it. Another week of the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Big thanks to Mike Renner for joining us today, Brian Finneran, and James Palmer as well. Have a great weekend. Appreciate each and one of you for tuning in today. Sam Stu, thank you as always. You guys are rock stars. We'll be back on Monday, everybody. We out. Bye-bye. Peace. Go Rangers!